Chapter 764. Chu Kuangren was just about to walk out of the room. Instead of calling it a room, it was more like a cave. Although humans had invented houses and buildings, the telekinesis tribe had yet to be fully popularized. Some people still lived in caves, such as Tsang, who was bullied by the telekinesis tribe. Logically speaking, as the former young master of the tribe, Tsang should have been able to afford a house no matter how poor he was. In fact, his parents, who were the leaders of the tribe, were now wearing luxurious clothes made of silk and living in a luxurious building with richly ornamented beams and painted rafters. In this era, it could be considered as a palace. In comparison, his son was bullied by others in the clan, and even his soul was shattered by others. The reason was that Tsang had offended a deity. His parents were the most loyal believers of the deity. To them, anyone who offended a deity was unforgivable. Even their own son was no exception. "It's your bad luck to have parents who are fanatics," Chu Kuangren muttered. He scanned the area with his emperor's thought and soon found a few long-eared rabbits in the nearby forest. He wanted to use the spatial conveyor skill to teleport over, but he realized that he could not use that skill for the time being. With a single thought, the few long-eared rabbits were captured by his mind power. These rabbits were all demonic beasts with golden core and nascent soul cultivations, but in front of Chu Kuangren's mind power, they were no different from ordinary rabbits. He snapped his fingers. A ball of flame appeared. Not long after, the rabbits were roasted. Chu Kuangren gobbled them up. There was no seasoning, so the taste was average. However, with his current condition, he could not ask for more. After eating the rabbits, he drank a few mouthfuls of spring water. After eating and drinking, Chu Kuangren felt his body warm up, and the chill in his body had weakened a little. "It seems that before I study the time-space mirror, I must first remove the frost mark from my body." Chu Kuangren frowned. A few years ago, the Divine Will tribe suffered from a natural disaster. They did not make offerings to the gods in time, and the gods punished them. The heavens were indignant and retorted a few times. Then, the master god of ice, who was far away on the divine mountain, planted this frost mark across space. From then on, he suffered the pain of being eroded by the cold all year round. Under the erosion of the cold, his psyche power could no longer continue to grow. However, this frost mark was not a difficult task for Chu Kuangren. With the help of his powerful mind power, it did not take long for him to remove the frost mark in no time at all. The divine mountain was where the overgod resided. The cold-looking master god of ice and snow suddenly opened her eyes and frowned. "Oh, my frost mark has been removed? Could it be that a human emperor has taken action?" He snorted softly. "Lowly human, I originally wanted to let you live a few more years in this bitter cold." Next, he sent a subordinate god to the Divine Will tribe. Recklessly removing the cold mark was a provocation to him, and on this land, no one could offend the dignity of God. Chu Kuangren did not know anything about the godly mountain. After dealing with the cold mark in his body, he found some medicinal ingredients in the mountain range and refined some pills for fasting. These fasting pills were not of a high grade. In the cultivation world, even golden core and nascent soul cultivators would not be interested in them. However, these pills were enough to keep Chu Kuangren from eating or drinking for 10 years. He began to study the time-space mirror in the cave. A month had passed. He had finally figured out a way to solve this problem. The time-space mirror was made up of 9 nested rings, and the center of each ring was filled with countless Daoist patterns. Chu Kuangren had only studied the outermost 2 rings, and that was how he mastered the spatial shift and time halt abilities. If he wanted to enter the river of time, he would need to fully understand the 3rd ring on the time-space mirror. Besides that, opening the river of time would require an enormous amount of energy, and that energy could not be any weaker than a great Daoist lord's. The former was still manageable. Chu Kuangren's cultivation base was gone, but his realm and level of enlightenment were still there. Although the 3rd ring was mysterious, he already had some clues about it. He would definitely be able to fully understand it in a few months' time. The latter would be difficult. Energy that was comparable to a great Daoist lord. Not to mention now, even after 10 or so eras, there was not a single great Daoist lord in the firmament star. Wait a minute. I might not be able to find a great Daoist lord, but there are deities now. The overgods are already comparable to a Daoist lord, and their godheads contain an enormous amount of energy. If I kill a few more overgods and take a few more godheads, I might be able to reach the level of a great Daoist lord. Chu Kuangren rubbed his chin and set his sights on the overgods. According to the historical records, the War of Defiant Gods was started by the human kings. If that was the case, then he would be the one to repeat history. If the human race wanted to continue to develop, there would be no place for the deities. He couldn't tolerate it either. After making up his mind, Chu Kuangren continued to study the mysteries of the time-space mirror's third ring, hoping to fully understand it as soon as possible. Time passed. 10 days had passed, 20 days had passed, another month had passed. Chu Kuangren had already mastered half of the mysteries of the third ring. Not only that, but throughout the process, he had also mastered the time halt and spatial shift abilities that the time-space mirror had given him. Now, he could use these two abilities with his mind power without the need for cultivation. In other words, he could use his mind power as an emperor's essence. This gave Chu Kuangren some inspiration. The emperor's essence was energy. Meanwhile, mind power was also a form of energy that could not be seen or touched. Perhaps he could temporarily use his mind power to replace the emperor's essence. That way, with his powerful soul power, even if his cultivation was gone, he could still use his previous techniques. In fact, the mind power technique was very similar to the emperor's essence technique in many ways. It did not take much effort, and with Chu Kuangren's level of understanding, he soon found the common point between the two and connected them. Junior realm, open. Chu Kuangren's mind moved, and his mind power and Daoist patterns intertwined to form a junior realm that covered a 10-kilometer radius around him. Everything within this 10-kilometer radius was under his control. I did it. The junior realm was originally formed by the combination of Emperor's essence and Daoist patterns, but now I can use my mind power and Daoist patterns to condense it, and it's not any weaker than before. I'm such a genius. Chu Kuangren could not help but smile. His Dao was already at the ultimate Dao. If he were to return, coupled with the ultimate Emperor's essence in his body and his mind power, the power of this junior realm would increase by leaps and bounds. Not only his junior realm, but his other techniques would also be enhanced. After all, everyone else was using Emperor's essence to battle. Chu Kuangren, on the other hand, had the Emperor's essence and mind power, which would double his combat strength. Chu Kuangren was secretly looking forward to it. Just as Chu Kuangren was feeling happy, he suddenly sensed a commotion not far away. It seemed like someone was fighting. He put away his junior realm and activated his mind power. Then he saw 3 people beating up a green-robed young man in the forest. Chapter 765. Inside the forest. 3 young men were attacking a young man. The young man was holding a bag in his hand. The young men channeled their mind power and turned it into ice arrows and fireballs that were aimed at the young man. The young man shielded the bundle behind him and held a black iron sword in his hand. He waved the sword and shattered the ice arrows and fireballs that came at him one by one. Qing Yi, do you have a death wish? The tribe strictly forbids anyone from practicing qi refinement. How dare you break the rules? One of the young men looked at the young man and said with a gloomy expression. Hearing this, Qing Yi's expression did not change. He said indifferently, young master once said that the method of qi refinement is the future of the human race. If the spiritual sense tribe continues to be so rigidly conservative and do not know how to improve, it will be replaced one day. Young master? Your young master's corpse is probably rotting by now. The young man in the lead sneered. Fu Jin, what did you say? Qing Yi's expression changed and his tone turned cold. You probably don't know yet. Your young master had a duel with my big brother Fu Yuan a few months ago, but his mind power has not improved at all. How could he be a match for my big brother? There's no way he could survive after being hit by my big brother's soul crusher all. The young man, Fu Jin, sneered. Qing Yi's face turned pale and his mind was in a mess. Fu Jin and the others took this opportunity to channel their mind power and condense the spiritual qi between heaven and earth, turning it into ice arrows and fireballs that were aimed at Qing Yi. At this moment, Qing Yi's mind was uneasy. The sudden attack caused him to become flustered and unable to deal with it at all. Just when he was in danger, an invisible mind power wave turned into a barrier that blocked the ice arrows and fireballs around him. This mind power, who is it? The young man, Fu Jin, and the others' expressions changed slightly. A figure slowly walked out from the forest. That person was dressed in white and had delicate features. Although he was not considered handsome, he had an extraordinary aura that made it hard for people to look away. It's Firmament. How is it possible that he's not dead? Fu Jin and the others' expressions suddenly became horrified. They stared at Chu Kuangren, who was slowly walking towards them as if they had seen a ghost. Qing Yi, on the other hand, looked at Chu Kuangren with a joyful expression. However, he was slightly stunned as he felt that the young master in front of him was a little different. Although the face was still the same. However, his temperament was completely different. It was ethereal and otherworldly, making people want to approach him, but they couldn't touch him. "Young master, are you all right?" "Nothing." Chu Kuangren chuckled. Through his memories, he already knew the identity of the man in green. He was his only friend in the Divine Force tribe. After he was stripped of his position as the young master, everyone mocked him and bullied him in order to gain the favor of the gods. Only Qing Yi, the playmate who had grown up with him, remained by his side and never abandoned him. "Song, I didn't expect you to be so lucky. You actually didn't die. Also, it was you who instigated Qing Yi to cultivate qi refinement. I will definitely report this matter to the clan leader and have him punish the two of you," Fu Jin said loudly. However, Chu Kuangren merely glanced at him. With a single thought, the cold air between heaven and earth intensified. A gust of cold wind blew past. Then, 3 more ice sculptures appeared on the scene. Beside him, Qing Yi's eyes widened in astonishment. Freezing with a thought. "Young master, your freezing with a thought has become so powerful." Freezing with a thought was one of the telekinesis cultivation techniques of the Divine Force tribe. It was also one of Tsong's cultivation techniques. However, because of the frost mark, his telekinesis had not improved for a long time, and the power of this cultivation technique had also stagnated. Now, however, Chu Kuangren had frozen Fu Jin and the other two in front of Qing Yi. The strength he displayed was far beyond Qing Yi's imagination. One should know that Fu Jin's strength was considered outstanding among the younger generation of the Divine Force tribe. He was comparable to a qi refinement sage. "Not bad," Chu Kuangren said calmly. He looked at Qing Yi and used Xiao AI to analyze him. From what he could sense, Qing Yi's current strength was equivalent to a sage. Moreover, he was only in his 20s. A sage in his 20s would definitely be the top sky prides in the future. Of course, this was also due to the environment of the ancient era. In this era, although the cultivation civilization had not been developed for long, the spiritual qi was abundant and the heavenly Tao had manifested. It was very suitable for cultivation. "Let's go back first." Chu Kuangren chuckled and ignored the few ice sculptures. Both of them returned to the cave. "Qing Yi, you've been gone for a few months. Where have you been?" Chu Kuangren asked curiously. Upon hearing that, Qing Yi took out the bag on his back and said, "Young master, I've found something good for you." He opened the bag. Inside the bag was a white, furry cloak. "Young master, this is made from the fur of the white flame fox. It's very warm. Try it on," Qing Yi said. Chu Kuangren was stunned. "You went to kill the white flame fox?" "That was too dangerous. The white flame fox is famous for its powerful strength. Are you hurt?" Chu Kuangren asked. The white flame fox was a powerful wild beast tens of thousands of miles away from the Divine Force tribe. It had the strength of a great sage, which was no weaker than Qing Yi. It must have taken Qing Yi a lot of effort to kill it. "It's all right, young master. The fur of the white flame fox can suppress the cold qi. With this cloak, you'll feel better." Qing Yi put the cloak on Chu Kuangren. It was neither too big nor too small, and it fit him perfectly. "Young master, how is it?" Qing asked. After Chu Kuangren put it on, he felt a warm feeling coming from the cloak. Moreover, the The cloak was furry and very comfortable to the touch. Thank you. This cloak is very good, but I've solved the frost mark in my body. You don't have to risk your life for me anymore. It's solved? Qingyi was shocked. That's a mark left by the frost master deity. Young master, how did you solve it? I can't explain it in a short time. But I've been studying this mark for many years, and it was solved a few days ago. Chu Kuangren found an excuse. He did not want to expose his identity as someone from the future. Who knew how it would affect the future? Although Qingyi felt that Chu Kuangren was different, she did not think too much about it. She was happy that he had solved the problem that had plagued her for many years. Young master, I don't think Fu Yuan will let you go after you killed Fu Jin and the others. Why don't we leave first? Qingyi said worriedly. Fu Yuan was the strongest cultivator of the younger generation in the Divine Will tribe. His father was one of the few psychokinesis masters in the Divine Will tribe, and his combat strength was comparable to an emperor's. That was a realm that Qingyi could never reach. Of course we'll leave. But before that, I have something I need to do, Chu Kuangren said. He was not interested in staying in a tribe that was filled with deity believers. Even if Qingyi did not say so, he would have left anyway. However, there were two things in the Divine Will tribe that he was interested in, and he wanted to get his hands on them before he left. Song, come out now. At that moment, a voice came from outside the cave. Chu Kuangren and Qingyi walked out. More than 10 tribesmen surrounded them, and Qingyi instinctively shielded Chu Kuangren behind her. What are you guys trying to do? No way. They just killed Fu Jin and these people found out so quickly? Chapter 766. Song the God is here. He wants you to meet him. The leader of the Divine Thought tribe said. Oh, the God is here? Yes, hurry up and follow me to pay your respects. If you perform well, you might even be able to obtain God's forgiveness. It's not impossible for him to remove the frost mark and restore your identity as a young master. That tribe member said. Let's go then. Chu Kuangren tightened the cloak on his body and chuckled. Green Robe followed behind him. Both of them arrived at the central area of the Divine Thought tribe. There were countless houses there, and any one of them was better than the cave that Chu Kuangren was staying in. Look, isn't that the old young master? He's wearing a cloak made from the fur of the white flame fox. Why is he wearing such a good item? It's like a flower stuck in cow dung. Did he steal it? How could he get his hands on such a good item when his life is already so difficult? The people around Chu Kuangren could not help but point fingers at him. Chu Kuangren remained calm in the face of such a situation. From Tsong's memory, he had long gotten used to such things. He was also curiously observing his surroundings with his emperor's thought. In the entire Divine Thought tribe, most of them were ordinary people. Only a few of them had telekinesis talent and could cultivate it. To them, telekinesis was a gift from the gods. As for chi refinement was not allowed in the Divine Thought tribe. To them, chi refinement was equivalent to stealing the gods' power. It was a great disrespect to the gods and was unforgivable. However, Song had traveled a few years ago and witnessed the power of chi refinement cultivators. He knew that they were the future of the human race. That was why he allowed Green Robe, who had no telekinesis talent, to secretly cultivate chi refinement. That way, she would at least have the ability to protect herself. Chu Kuangren and Green Robe arrived at a palace in the tribe. A white-robed man sat in the palace. The man's body was surrounded by a frosty chi that formed ice blocks on the ground. Many servants in the palace were shivering from the cold. Some of them even had the frosty chi enter their bodies. Even if they survived, they would suffer from many illnesses for the rest of their lives. Only a few people were able to remain unscathed in this cold air. These people were the telekinesis masters of the Divine Sense tribe. One of them was a handsome middle-aged man. He was the closest to the man in white, who was the god. He was very tall, but when he stood in front of the god, he unconsciously hunched his body and looked like he was trying to flatter him. This person was the leader of the Divine Sense tribe. Song's father. Unfilial son, you've finally come. When Father Tsong saw Tsong, he snorted coldly, God has summoned you and you actually dare to be slow. Hurry up and kneel. Chu Kuangren ignored him and looked at the deity before him with a hint of disappointment in his eyes. So you're just a lower deity. Hearing his words, everyone's expression changed. To them, God is supreme. Even if Chu Kuangren was a lower celestial, he was still an existence that was above them. Chu Kuangren's words and tone were clearly belittling the celestials. If God was unhappy, he could destroy him with a wave of his hand. It didn't matter if they destroyed the heavens. What would they do if they vented their anger on the divine sense tribe? At that thought, everyone could not help but feel terrified and angry. They looked at Chu Kuangren as if they wanted to eat him alive. Beside Chu Kuangren, Qing Yi was also shocked. The young master was too bold. The asterisk starred, "How dare you disrespect the celestials?" Beside him, a young man stood up. Chu Kuangren knew who he was. It was Fu Yuan, the murderer of Tsang. At that moment, Fu Yuan was puzzled. He did not know why his soul crusher all did not kill Tsang. However, that did not stop him from showing off in front of the celestials. In his opinion, as long as he performed well, he might be chosen by the celestials to be a divine messenger. That would be a supreme honor. At that thought, Fu Yuan could not help but feel excited. His mind surged and turned into an invisible giant hand that grabbed at Tsang. However, when his invisible giant hand approached Chu Kuangren, an indescribably majestic mind power instantly shattered it. Fu Yuan's expression changed slightly. What happened? At that moment, Chu Kuangren was already looking at him. There was a hint of murderous intent in his eyes. After all, how many blood tribe cultivators had Chu Kuangren killed in the extraterrestrial battlefield? More than 1 billion. No ordinary person could withstand Chu Kuangren's murderous intent. Even if it was just a trace, it was enough to make Fu Yuan feel like he had fallen into an ice cellar. This guy, why does he have such a gaze? Fu Yuan's face was as pale as a sheet. He gritted his teeth and activated his strongest mind power technique. B** starred, "Taste my soul crusher all." The soul crusher all specialized in attacking one's soul. If an emperor were to be hit by this attack, they would not have a good time either. It was the same technique that killed Tsang back then. The soul crusher all struck Chu Kuangren's soul like a hot knife through butter. A scream was heard. It was not Chu Kuangren, but Fu Yuan. He felt like his soul crusher all was like an egg that had been hit on a piece of granite. It exploded on the spot. The backlash from the soul crusher all caused his soul to scream in pain. "How stupid!" Chu Kuangren said calmly. With a thought, he activated his mind power. A chill erupted from under Chu Kuangren's feet and quickly spread out, instantly freezing Fu Yuan into an ice sculpture. It was the frozen thought. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw that. Was that still the young master they knew? How did he become so powerful all of a sudden? "My son!" At that moment, a middle-aged man beside the deity roared in grief and looked at Chu Kuangren angrily. That man was Fu Yuan's father, one of the few experts in the divine thought tribe. "I'll make you pay for my son's death." Fu Yuan's father roared, and his emperor-level mind power gushed out like a tidal wave. The surrounding spiritual qi gathered and surged, turning into a huge flame giant that emanated a menacing aura. That was the divine thought tribe's mind power cultivation technique, the flame spirit giant. The flame spirit giant slapped its palm towards Chu Kuangren. However, Chu Kuangren yawned and cast the frozen thought again, instantly freezing the huge flame giant into an ice sculpture. Even Fu Yuan's father was not spared. Everyone at the scene was completely dumbfounded. Not only did Chu Kuangren kill Fu Yuan in an instant. Now, even Fu Yuan's father could not withstand a single attack from him. Tsang's father was dumbfounded. He looked at Chu Kuangren and felt that the person in front of him was extremely unfamiliar. The way Chu Kuangren looked at him was also indifferent and emotionless. "You're not Tsang. Who are you?" Tsang's father said in horror. Next to him, the low god also became a little interested. He slowly stood up and said, "Interesting. I didn't expect a human with the Lord Overgod's frost mark to have such strength. Your psyche power is stronger than anyone in the divine thought tribe. Unfortunately, You don't respect the gods." As he said that, he slowly raised his hand and unleashed a powerful divine power. A howling cold wind swept across, and a majestic chill was about to explode. He believed that his lower celestial strength was enough to handle everything. However, his expression changed immediately. Chapter 767. A terrifying energy fluctuation came from within the palace. Everyone in the Divine Thought tribe could feel a chill sweeping out from the palace. Everyone was trembling in fear. They knew that it was the wrath of a god. Who the F***ck is this? How dare they anger a god? D****. I hope the god won't take it out on us. God, please forgive us. Someone knelt on the ground and begged the god for mercy. Not long after, the divine energy fluctuation that swept out from the palace disappeared. Everyone was stunned for a moment before joy appeared on their faces. Thank you for your mercy. Your grace is boundless. Everyone was praising the god's mercy. Meanwhile, in the palace, the god who was praised by everyone could not help but tremble when he saw Chu Kuangren in front of him. There was an unprecedented look of panic on his face. He felt that his divine energy was suddenly suppressed by an extremely powerful force that could not be released at all. And that force was right around him. Junior Realm. A heavenly honorable's junior realm. The lower celestial looked at Chu Kuangren in shock. He did not expect to meet a heavenly honorable who could fight against a god here. He was too unlucky. Aren't heavenly honorables rare? How could I meet one so coincidentally? The lower celestial wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Then he was puzzled. A heavenly honorable's junior realm was formed by the fusion of Emperor's Qi and Daoist runes. But why was there no Emperor's Qi in this person's junior realm? What's going on? However, he could not figure it out. That was because Chu Kuangren had already reached out a finger towards him. With just a light tap, a surge of chilling Qi exploded and landed on his chest. The Frost Master Deity's subordinate deities were supposed to be experts in chilling Qi. Yet now, he was frozen into an ice sculpture by the chilling Qi. Chu Kuangren walked towards the ice sculpture and channeled his mind power on his fingertip. With a loud boom, the ice sculpture turned into ice shards. Within the shards was a prismatic crystal. It was a lower celestial's godhead. Chu Kuangren picked it up and handed it to Green Robe beside him. Green Robe took the godhead in a daze. He had yet to recover from the shock. It wasn't just him. Everyone else in the palace hadn't recovered from their shock. A god had been killed right in front of them. Moreover, he had been easily crushed to death. All right, didn't I just kill a god? What's there to be surprised about? Let's go. Chu Kuangren patted Green Robe's shoulder. Xianxia was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly followed. Behind him, Father Tsong and the others did not dare to move at all. After Chu Kuangren walked out of the palace, he went to a place in the Divine Thought tribe that had a collection of telekinesis cultivation techniques. He took away all of the best telekinesis cultivation techniques there as he planned to focus on his telekinesis for the time being. These telekinesis cultivation methods were of great reference value to him. Then he came to a forest. There was a fruit tree in the forest. There were dozens of gray fruits growing on the fruit tree. This was the second item that Chu Kuangren wanted, the soul fruit. The soul fruit was one of the firmament star's 10 great spirit fruits. As the name suggested, this fruit had the ability to strengthen one's soul energy, which was quite useful to Chu Kuangren now. There were hundreds of guards around the soul fruit tree, and they were all the elites of the Divine Thought tribe. Among them, there were more than 10 sage-level telekinesis cultivators, and 2 of them were comparable to emperors. The Divine Thought tribe valued the soul fruit tree very much. After all, increasing one's soul energy was equivalent to increasing one's telekinesis, and one soul fruit was enough to create a telekinesis master. Besides, the soul fruit was also an important offering to their god. It would ripen once every 10,000 years, and there would only be 99 soul fruits every time it ripened. 90 of these fruits were used as offerings. Song? What are you doing here? This is not a place you should be at. Get lost. A few guards roared at Chu Kuangren. However, Chu Kuangren ignored them. With a lift of his arm, hundreds of guards were blasted away by an invisible force. Chu Kuangren strolled to the front of the soul fruit tree. He used his telekinesis to pluck all the fruits one by one. "Hey, Qingyi, don't you have a yin and yang ring?" Chu Kuangren glanced at Qingyi and saw that she was holding the lower deity godhead and the pile of scrolls. Her hands were so busy that she could only keep her sword by her waist. Qingyi was confused. "A yin and yang ring? What's that?" Chu Kuangren tried to recall. There was no such thing as a yin and yang ring in Song's memory. The yin and yang ring had not been invented in this era. It was not just a yin and yang ring. There were also alchemy, formation, runes, and other auxiliary cultivation techniques that were still in the early stages. Chu Kuangren pondered. Since he did not have a yin and yang ring, he found a sack and stuffed all the soul fruits into it. Beside him, Qingyi could not help but be dumbfounded. To the divine thought tribe, each of these soul fruits was extremely precious, but Chu Kuangren just stuffed them all into the sack. After collecting the cultivation techniques and the soul fruits, Chu Kuangren left the divine thought tribe with Qingyi. Along the way, some fanatics found out that he had killed a deity and wanted to seek revenge, regardless of the difference in strength. "You blasphemer, you will die a horrible death. Put the soul fruits down." Be *starred. The soul fruits are divine items. How can you just stuff them into a sack? "What a waste, you bastard." Chu Kuangren did not even bat an eyelid at the scoldings and accusations from the tribesmen. He did not even flinch at all. Some of those who wanted to seek revenge couldn't even get close to him before they were crushed into powder by his telekinesis. "Qingyi, do you regret it?" Chu Kuangren looked at Qingyi, who looked a little unnatural. Qingyi grew up here, and now that he had betrayed the divine thought tribe with him, he thought that he would feel some kind of psychological burden. Qingyi shook his head and said, "I'm alone here. Following the young master is my only choice. I don't regret it." When he was very young, Qingyi's parents were killed because they talked back to the deities, so he did not have a good impression of the deities. He was even more resistant to this tribe that worshipped the deities. He had wanted to leave for a long time. "But, are you really the young master?" Qingyi looked at Chu Kuangren and asked doubtfully. No matter how slow he was, he could still sense the change in Chu Kuangren. In just a few months, he had gone from being a bullied old young master to killing a deity with ease. That change was too unbelievable. "Heh, as long as you're willing, I'll always be your young master." Chu Kuangren chuckled and looked at Qingyi. Qingyi looked at Chu Kuangren and saw sincerity in his eyes. He did not sense any hostility. In the end, he could only put his doubts aside. No matter how big the change was, the young master was still his young master. His only choice now was to follow the man before him. Soon, the two left the divine thought tribe. The news of the death of a deity soon reached the godly mountain. When the ice master god of the god mountain received the news, she let out a look of excitement. "An ant-like human who has been marked by me with a frost mark has suddenly become able to kill a god? Interesting. Truly interesting." Soon, the news spread from the godly mountain. Song was on the blacklist of the deities. After all, there were not many who dared to kill a deity in this era. Chapter 768. The news of Chu Kuangren killing a deity spread like wildfire. Soon enough, the name Firmament Star spread like wildfire. Besides the deities who saw him as an enemy, the humans were also paying attention to him. Heh, how brave of him to kill a deity. However, the deities will not let go of someone who dares to kill a deity. Let's wait and see. Perhaps this person can be recruited into the god-defying pavilion. The Firmament Star was now ruled by the deities. Although there was a turbulent undercurrent beneath the surface, it was still calm on the surface. The news of Chu Kuangren killing a deity was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, causing ripples. Congratulations, host. You have drawn a legendary craftsman's inheritance. Chu Kuangren listened to the fantasy roulette's voice and could not help but smile in satisfaction. An equipment craftsman's inheritance is not bad. In the current Firmament Star, besides Qi refinement, the other auxiliary cultivation techniques were still in the early stages. His equipment crafting technique was unparalleled in this era, and it would be very useful for his future actions. Looking at Green Shirt, who was carrying a pile of luggage, Chu Kuangren felt that it was more important to use this technique to refine a yin and yang ring. Green Shirt, wait here. Chu Kuangren's figure instantly disappeared. Not long after, he returned. In his hands there were still some ores. Young master, why are you carrying a pile of stones? Heh, these stones are very useful. Chu Kuangren smirked. These ores were called hidden spatial stones, and they were the main materials used to refine yin and yang rings. These ores were now distributed all over the world, so they were not too rare. However, the art of equipment crafting had not been popularized yet, so not many people noticed the value of these ores. Chu Kuangren moved his mind, and a ball of flame floated from his palm. It was a flame that was activated by his mind power. Although it was not comparable to the phoenix flame, with Chu Kuangren's mind power, its temperature was so high that few mystical flames in Firmament Star could compare. The hidden spatial stone gradually melted in his palm. Gradually, it formed into a ring. Chu Kuangren injected his mind power into it to open up a space. Soon, a yin and yang ring was created. Take it and toss your luggage inside. Chu Kuangren then told Qingyi how to use the yin and yang ring. Xianxia took the ring and couldn't help but feel suspicious. Was this small ring really that powerful? He pointed the ring at his heart and injected his spiritual power into it. After a flash of light, all the luggage in front of him disappeared. This. Xianxia opened his mouth wide and was speechless for a long time. Chu Kuangren channeled his mind power and knocked his opponent on the head. Let's not talk about this. This is too miraculous. Qing exclaimed as he touched the universe ring in his hand. His eyes sparkled as if he had found a treasure. What a fuss! Chu Kuangren shook his head and chuckled. With Qingyi's cultivation, he could have as many Qian Kun rings as he wanted in the future. However, in this era, the value of this one and only Qian Kun ring was probably no less than a Dao artifact. Looks like in order to strengthen the human race, I'll need to start a technological revolution here. Alchemy, equipment refinement, runes, formation techniques. Whatever I know, I'll pass it on here, Chu Kuangren murmured. He had thought it through very clearly. Since he had come to this era, he had to do something. Qingyi, what do you think about me becoming the king of the human race? Chu Kuangren suddenly said. Qingyi, who was still playing with the universe ring, was stunned when he heard his words. Young master, you're not joking, are you? Although the human race looked weak on the surface as far as he knew, there seemed to be many strong cultivators hiding in the dark. To be the king of the entire human race. Perhaps even the gods could not do such a thing. Do I look like I'm joking? If you want to be the king, then I'll be your guard. I'll sweep away all obstacles for you. Qingyi said seriously. This bit of strength of yours is still not enough. I'll work hard to become stronger. I believe in you. Chu Kuangren continued his journey with Qingyi. As for where his destination was, it was not clear yet. Chu Kuangren had a vague plan in his mind, but to implement it, he needed a place where he could stand firm. In a forest. Chu Kuangren and Qingyi were both leaning against a tree. Chu Kuangren was munching on a gray fruit in his hand. It was a soul fruit, the 74th soul fruit that he had eaten. Under the nourishment of dozens of soul fruits, his soul energy had become much stronger than before. In terms of soul energy alone, there were not many in the minor Daoist realm who could match up to him. Because of that, his mind power had also become much stronger. Young master, the Yanwu tribe is just ahead. Yanwu tribe. Oh, I remember it. It's one of the top 10 human tribes. There must be many cultivators in the tribe, right? Chu Kuangren said. There were many human tribes in the Firmament Star, but the top 10 tribes were the most powerful. Some of these tribes were like the Transcendent Thought tribe, blindly worshipping the gods. Most of the people in these tribes were believers of the gods. Some tribes, on the other hand, had discovered the true meaning of power through cultivation and had gradually stopped worshipping the gods. The Yanwu tribe was one of them. Then let's pay them a visit. If it's appropriate, we might stay here for a while. Chu Kuangren laughed. Just as the two of them were about to head to the tribe, Chu Kuangren suddenly sensed something and stopped in his tracks. Hold on. Young master, what's wrong? There's a deity's aura. It's not far from here. Chu Kuangren's emperor's thought perception could cover the entire firmament star, but he usually kept it to himself. After all, who would keep their senses on all the time? However, even if Chu Kuangren did not have his senses activated all the time, he was still very sensitive to strange auras within a certain range. 3,000 miles away, Chu Kuangren's spiritual thoughts spread out and arrived at a valley. In the valley, there were two deities. Judging from their auras, they were the subordinate deities of the windstorm master god. In front of these two subordinate deities was a ferocious beast that looked like a tiger with fleshy wings on its back. It was Xianxia. Xianxia, I want you to attack the Yanwu tribe. How are your preparations going? One of the subordinate deities asked. Xianxia hesitated and said, there are many experts in the Yanwu tribe. I don't want to become enemies with them. Oh, so you're going to disobey the gods? Xianxia's eyes were filled with fear as he said, I wouldn't dare, but it's just me alone. I'm afraid I won't be a threat to the Yanwu tribe. Don't worry about that. Besides you, there's also Qi, Thunder Beast, and the others. They've agreed to help too. This? All right. Xianxia nodded. Very well. Tomorrow at this time, all of you will attack the Yanwu tribe together. When that time comes, we'll attack and repel you. One of the superior subordinate deities said. Understood. Chu Kuangren heard every word of the conversation in the valley. He sneered and said, another self-directed and self-acted play. Gods really can't get tired of this. Chapter 769. When humans encountered unbearable hardships, they would seek help from the deities. This was how the deities developed their faith. In the past, the humans were so weak that the deities did not even need to deliberately create hardships for them to seek help from the deities. However, over the years, the cultivators had been growing stronger and stronger. The humans had gradually become less reliant on the deities. When the deities realized this, they naturally would not sit idly by. Hence, all sorts of hardships created by the deities took turns. The frost god created extreme cold, the tempest god created violent winds, the ocean god created tsunamis, and the Osiris god released thousands of evil spirits. The endless hardships made the humans miserable. They could only seek help from the deities again and again. That was how the deities obtained the faith they wanted. This is how the deities act. They self-directed and played the humans in the palm of their hands, Chu Kuangren said calmly. Qing Yi was stunned when he heard what Chu Kuangren said. He knew that the deities were not easy to deal with, but he did not expect them to be this despicable. Don't they care about the human cultivators? The cultivators do, but they can't. What do you mean? Qing Yi was a little confused. Chu Kuangren continued, the cultivators can intervene, but they can't reveal too much strength, lest the deities become wary. In the eyes of the gods now, although the human cultivators are interesting, they are not strong enough to threaten the status of the gods. And the human cultivators are also using this point to secretly accumulate their strength, waiting for the opportunity to counterattack in one fell swoop, so they can't be exposed for the time being. Therefore, the human cultivators can only fight against the gods at this stage without revealing their true strength. Cyan Yi suddenly understood and nodded. He then asked, can the Yanwu tribe withstand the disaster created by the gods this time? Chu Kuangren scanned the entire Yanwu tribe with his emperor's thought and shook his head. The strongest cultivator in the tribe is only in the beginning emperor realm. It's basically impossible for them to withstand the attacks of Xianxia and the Thunder Beast. Then should we intervene? Of course. Chu Kuangren smiled. He would not sit back and watch the deities act so presumptuously in front of him. The next day, a thunderous roar came from the Yanwu tribe. Xianxia, Ho, and Thunder Beast appeared in the tribe. These ferocious beasts were powerful and naturally knew how to cultivate. Adding on the abundant spiritual energy of this era and the manifestation of the heavenly Tao, it didn't take them a few hundred years to cultivate to the early emperor realm. In the Yanwu tribe, the most powerful cultivator was a burly man with a head full of red hair. He was also the leader of this tribe, Yanwu. Yenwu was also at the Origin Emperor realm, but he was unable to withstand the combined attacks of the beasts and was quickly defeated. Faced with this situation, some of the clansmen were shaken. They knelt on the ground and wanted to seek help from the gods like before. Seeing this, Yenwu felt helpless as well. Compared to the gods, his power was still too weak. One had to know that even the weakest god had the strength of a celestial venerable. They were much stronger than the initial emperor realm. A god who had been observing in the dark was ready to take action. However, one of the other gods stopped him and said, "There's no need to rush. Let's wait for more of their casualties. The more unforgettable their suffering is, the stronger their faith will be. This level of suffering is still not enough." The god's lips curled into a cold smile. Hearing this, the other gods also had an expression of understanding. "You're right. Then let's wait and let these lowly humans know that worshipping the gods is the only way for them to survive in this world. Qi refinement and cultivation are all bullshit." Xianxia, Thunder Beast, Ho, and the other ferocious beasts were about to attack again and slaughter the Yenwu tribe. Countless humans couldn't help but tremble at the sight of these ferocious beasts, not having the courage to fight them at all. A burly man roared and charged forward with a spear in his hand. "It's brave warrior Atu. Atu, it's up to you." Everyone looked at the burly man Atu and couldn't help but feel hopeful. Atu's spear stabbed into Xianxia. But with a clang, the spear broke into two, while Xianxia was completely unharmed, not even a single hair fell. This scene caused everyone to fall into despair again. Atu looked at the spear in his hand and was at a loss. His spear could pierce through a mountain, but it couldn't even harm a single hair on Xianxia's body. The difference was just too huge. "A human who isn't even an emperor dares to harm my body?" Xianxia scoffed coldly and raised his hand to deal with Atu. Just as Atu thought that he was about to die, Xianxia's claw stopped in midair and couldn't descend anymore. Then Xianxia's face was filled with fear. "What is going on? What is this power? This isn't god power, it isn't a god attacking." Xianxia was frightened by the unexpected change. Especially from this power, he sensed an aura that made him fear even more than that of a god. What was this? It must be a god showing himself. A god is showing himself. Seeing Xianxia's sudden change, those who were sincerely praying to the gods were delighted. As expected, only a god could protect them. Qi refinement and cultivation were all unreliable. I am not a god." A chuckle was heard. A skinny young man in a white cloak slowly walked over. Behind him was a young man in green clothes. Everyone looked at each other when they saw that young man. Where did this sickly guy come from? How dare he insult the gods? A middle-aged man shouted at Chu Kuangren. "Sickly guy?" Chu Kuangren looked at himself. Indeed, Song's physical condition did not look good because he had been suffering from the cold qi all year round. His face was a little pale too. He did look a little ill. He did not care about the middle-aged man's insults, but Green Robe could no longer sit still. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. "You're asking for it." Green Robe drew his sword and was about to attack. Chu Kuangren raised his hand to stop him. "Don't bother." Green Robe could only angrily sheath his sword and glare at the middle-aged man. That man was so scared that he fell to the ground. "For you, how dare you interfere in our affairs?" The wild beasts looked at Chu Kuangren with fear. Although the young man before them looked weak, they did not know why he made them feel a chill down their spines. That feeling was even scarier than facing a god. "Heh, a few puppies. Get down." Chu Kuangren chuckled. As soon as he said that, the few wild beasts at the scene felt an incomparably horrifying force descending from the sky. With a bang, the few wild beasts were pressed to the ground without any resistance, unable to move. The Yenwu tribe's people, including the Emperor Yenwu, stared with their eyes wide open in disbelief at that scene. Those were all powerful wild beasts that were famous far and wide. He told them to get down just like that? Where did this guy come from? After Chu Kuangren suppressed the wild beasts, he looked up into the sky and said, "You've watched enough. It's time to come out." Chapter 770. You've watched enough. It's time to come out. Chu Kuangren said calmly. The two deities who were observing in the dark looked at each other. Did he notice us? This person is strange. There are no traces of qi refinement on him, yet he can easily suppress these beasts and even notice us. Should we show ourselves? No rush. Let's observe for a while longer. The two deities were considering whether to show themselves. If they showed themselves now, it would mean that they had been watching the beasts wreak havoc. If the people of the Yanwu tribe saw this, their faith would definitely plummet. This was the reason why they were so afraid. In the Yanwu tribe, everyone looked at the sky, which did not move at all, and felt very puzzled. Brother, who are you calling? Two deities hiding in the dark. Chu Kuangren said calmly. His words immediately displeased some of the believers in the tribe. Are you kidding me? If the gods were here, they wouldn't have let these beasts run wild. They would have killed them long ago. That's right. Do you think that the gods will just watch us being brutally killed by the beasts? You're just babbling nonsense. Child, the gods are merciful. They wouldn't do such a thing. Please stop slandering the gods. The people of the Yanwu tribe kept pointing fingers at Chu Kuangren. From their point of view, Chu Kuangren was slandering the gods. Such an act was heinous, and the believers would never forgive it. Heh, looks like I'll have to drag you out myself. Chu Kuangren chuckled. The deities who were observing in the dark could not help but scoff at his words. A mere mortal wants to drag us out? What a joke. I'd like to see what he can do. The two deities were disdainful of Chu Kuangren. One had to know that they were all superior gods. According to the human race's ranking system, they were superior heavenly lords. There were only a few heavenly venerables in the entire human race. Not to mention upper heavenly venerables. Amidst the deities' playful gazes, Chu Kuangren gently lifted his hand and pointed a finger at them from afar. An unimaginable surge of mind power erupted. A large portion of the void trembled. Amidst the tremors, the expressions of the gods hidden in the void changed, and they frantically urged their divine powers to resist the tremors. But even so, he was still blown out of the void. Everyone could see that the two gods were in a sorry state. Yes, it's the subordinate god of the Tempest Master God. And a high god. Why would God appear there? The 33 main gods had a large number of subordinate gods, and in order to identify their factions, these subordinate gods all dressed differently. For example, the two storm subordinate gods that appeared in front of everyone were wearing cyan clothes with a whirlwind pattern drawn with golden threads. Coupled with the fluctuations of divine power, they looked very noble. The believers of the Yanwu tribe were stunned. They had never thought that the god would really be watching from the side, watching them suffer. They felt as if their beliefs were collapsing. God, why are you doing this to us? God, please explain. The believers held on to their last hope and asked the god. However, before they could say anything, Chu Kuangren spoke first. What else could it be? It's because they were the ones who found these wild beasts. Chu Kuangren chuckled and activated his mind power. A light screen appeared in the void. On the light screen was the scene of the conversation between the two gods and Xianxia. Chu Kuangren had recorded everything with his mind power. How could this be? So that's how it is. Under the irrefutable evidence, the two gods were unable to defend themselves. As gods, they looked down on humans. Since the truth had been exposed, they were too lazy to explain themselves. However, they were more curious about Chu Kuangren now. That energy just now was mind power. You're from the divine thought tribe. The gods had already sensed Chu Kuangren's mind power. They were not unfamiliar with this ability. After all, the divine thought tribe had always been their loyal believers. Tsang, one of the gods said loudly, the god killer Tsang. Chu Kuangren nodded. That's me. Well, I didn't expect to meet you here, and you even dared to ruin our plans. I guess this trip won't be a waste if I bring your head back with me. The god sneered. Then, a majestic divine power suddenly erupted from the god's body. Clouds and mist gathered around him, and a storm swept across the area. Countless trees were snapped by the storm, sand and pebbles were sent flying, and all the buildings in the Yanwu tribe trembled. Yen could not help but be horrified when he sensed the powerful energy. Is this the power of a god? He was only an emperor realm cultivator, but he was still too weak. Boy, feel the power of a god. The god snorted coldly. He threw a punch at Chu Kuangren, and the storm gathered to form a terrifying wind dragon that swept away the trees and pebbles. The people behind Chu Kuangren fled in all directions in fear. They had seen the god's power before. That one attack was enough to kill all of them. The god wanted to kill them because they had witnessed the god's pathetic state and knew the despicable deeds that the gods had committed. The wind is so strong today. Chu Kuangren wrapped his cloak tightly around him. He activated his mind power. Mysterious Daoist patterns spread out from Chu Kuangren. It was Chu Kuangren's ultimate Dao, the Dao of self-improvement and invincibility. The Daoist patterns and mind power intertwined and enveloped the entire Yanwu tribe. The trembling building stabilized, and the howling storm calmed down. As for the attack that the higher god unleashed, it instantly collapsed, leaving behind only a pile of broken wood and dried branches, a lesser realm. You're a heavenly honorable. Wait, why isn't there any emperor's essence in this lesser realm? Who are you, and how did you do it? The two gods widened their eyes in disbelief. They felt that their divine powers were completely suppressed, and it was difficult for them to use them. They were gods. Moreover, they were higher gods who were second only to the overgods. In this land, they were not afraid of anyone below the overgods. Yet now, they were being suppressed by a human. Chu Kuangren looked at the two gods in the sky and said, "I don't like to raise my head when I talk. You two better stay on the ground." Boom. An indescribably horrifying force erupted. The two gods felt as if their bodies were smashed by a planet, and they immediately fell from the sky onto the ground. Chu Kuangren walked up and stepped on one of the gods' heads. He said, "Now you look more pleasing to the eye." At that moment, the majesty of the gods was completely gone. The believers of the Yanwu tribe completely lost their faith when they saw that. They looked at Chu Kuangren in disbelief. This man had just stepped on a god. Be asterisk starred, be asterisk starred. You're going against the entire celestial race. The gods will never forgive you. You'll die, and you'll die horribly. Horribly. Boom. Chu Kuangren activated his mind power. The god's head that was clambering under his feet instantly exploded. Chapter 771. Indeed, very tragic. Green Robe could not help but shake his head when he saw the deity's head explode. The other deity trembled in fear when he saw his comrade's death. However, Chu Kuangren did not spare him either. He unleashed the frozen thought technique. The deity instantly turned into a pile of ice shards. With Chu Kuangren's current strength, killing a few upper deities in an instant was as easy as lifting a finger. Then he kept the deities' godheads. These godheads contained powerful energy, and to him, they would be the source of energy to open the river of time in the future. After killing two upper deities, the people of the Yanwu tribe were so scared that they stood rooted to the ground, not daring to move. As for the wild beasts, they were trembling in fear. The ferocious chi on their bodies had completely disappeared, and they were as obedient as kittens and puppies. Chu Kuangren glanced at the wild beasts and retracted his mind power. However, they dared not escape. They knew very well that as long as Chu Kuangren did not say anything, their lives would not be in their hands. "Go, guard the gate," Chu Kuangren said. "Guard the gate?" Everyone was speechless when they heard that. These were all famous ominous beasts. They did not expect Chu Kuangren to ask them to guard the gate. The wild beasts felt aggrieved too. What the hell? How could he ask them to guard the gate? They were wild beasts after all. Did they not care about their pride? "Why, you're not going?" Chu Kuangren said. No, I love guarding the gate the most. Yes, look at my physique. I was born to guard the gate." A few wild beasts quickly said and ran to the gate of the Yanwu tribe, scaring the guards half to death. Yanwu took a deep breath and came before Chu Kuangren. "Brother, I thank you on behalf of the tribe for saving our tribe from danger. From now on, you will be our most distinguished guest." "You're too kind, tribe leader." Under Yenwu's invitation, Chu Kuangren and Green Robe temporarily settled in the Yenwu tribe. At the same time, they were also inspecting the area. "Master, I would like to be your disciple." A strong man knelt before Chu Kuangren. This strong man was the #1 warrior in the Yenwu tribe. His cultivation was second only to Yenwu, and it could be said that his cultivation was almost the same as Qingyi's. With this strength, he was sought after by many people in the Yenwu tribe and was loved and respected by many. He also swore to protect the tribe. But after the attack of the ferocious beasts and after seeing the power of the gods, he realized how insignificant the power he was so proud of was. That was why he made the move of acknowledging Zhang Xian as his master today. Chu Kuangren shook his head. Seeing him shake his head, Adu panicked. "Could it be that my lord thinks that I'm lacking in talent and doesn't want to teach me?" "No, I can teach you, but there's no need for you to take me as your master." "Thank you, my lord." Atu was overjoyed. At this time, Yenwu walked over. When he saw Atu kneeling on the ground, he couldn't help but feel curious. "Atu, what happened to you? Did you make Brother Tsang unhappy?" After spending a few days together, Chu Kuangren's relationship with Yenwu had improved quite a bit. He had also changed the way he addressed Yenwu from fellow Daoist to Brother Tsang. "No, I'm asking Lord Tsang to guide me in my cultivation." "Nonsense, Brother Tsang is a psychic. Psychic power and qi refinement are two different things. How can he guide you?" Yenwu said. Atu was stunned as he did not know about this. "But Lord Tsang said he can teach me. As far as I know, people without the talent in psychic power can't cultivate psychic power." Yenwu was also a little confused. "I can't teach you psychic power, but I do know a thing or two about qi refinement." Chu Kuangren smiled. Yenwu looked at Chu Kuangren doubtfully. "But why didn't I sense any qi refinement aura from Brother Tsang? I didn't cultivate." Chu Kuangren said matter-of-factly. Yenwu's mouth twitched. Not a qi refinement cultivator, but he said he knew qi refinement. "This, Brother Tsang, are you really reliable? You won't cripple Rin school, will you?" "But who said I don't know qi refinement without qi refinement?" Chu Kuangren smirked. When it came to qi refinement, as someone who came from the future, his experience was definitely above that of the cultivators of this era. In order to dispel Yenwu's doubts, Chu Kuangren discussed the qi refinement Dao with Yenwu, which shocked him. "I didn't expect Brother Tsang to be so proficient in qi refinement as well as in qi refinement. I'm really surprised," Yenwu said in admiration. Then he said seriously, "Brother Tsang, I've been promoting qi refinement cultivation in the tribe recently. Since you're so proficient in qi refinement, I'm sure you'll be of help. I'd like to invite you to stay here for a long time." Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up when he heard that. He then chuckled and said, "I've killed a deity. Aren't you afraid that the deities will come to seek revenge and implicate the whole tribe?" Yenwu looked like he was struggling, but it was soon replaced by determination. Qi refinement is a way for humans to strengthen themselves. Instead of living under the oppression of the deities, I'd rather take the risk. You won't regret it. I'll regret it if I let go of a genius like Brother Tsang. Coincidentally, I also want to pass on what I've learned. Since tribe leader has the courage, it would be impolite of me to refuse." Chu Kuangren laughed. It was impossible for him to overthrow the rule of the deities alone. The humans needed to strengthen themselves. It was the entire human race that needed to strengthen themselves, not just one person. Therefore, he planned to pass on what he had learned to a portion of the human race to become stronger, and then pass it on to the next generation. After a few days of observation, he found that the Yenwu tribe was suitable for him to implement this plan, so he agreed to Yenwu's request. Not long after, the cultivators of the Yenwu tribe gathered. Chu Kuangren planned to teach them about Dao. Although his cultivation level was gone, his understanding of Dao and Dao techniques were still there. What is cultivation? Cultivation is qi refinement, refining the natural spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Chu Kuangren began to teach, and waves of Daoist rhymes spread. In an instant, the heavenly Dao sensed it and was shaken. On that day, The entire Yanwu tribe was shrouded in Chu Kuangren's Daoist rhymes. The sky was filled with golden lotuses, auspicious clouds, auspicious dragons and phoenixes, and many other heavenly Daoist transformations. Brother Tsong, you're exaggerating. Yanwu gulped and looked at Chu Kuangren, who was bathed in the heavenly Dao's radiance and looked like a Daoist ancestor. The cultivators of the Yanwu tribe were also shocked to the extreme. Even some of the surrounding tribes rushed over after seeing such a phenomenon and learned that someone in the Yanwu tribe was giving a Daoist sermon. Everyone could not help but feel excited. After all, only an immortal from the outer heavens could give a Daoist sermon to such a phenomenon in ancient times. That time, it directly raised the cultivation civilization of Firmament Star to a whole new level. Could it be that another immortal had appeared in the Yanwu tribe? In an instant, the human cultivators who heard the news rushed to the Yanwu tribe to listen to the immortal's sermon. The commotion caused by this sermon was huge. Not only the human race, but even the gods were alarmed. Chapter 772. To be able to talk about such a heavenly Tao phenomenon, could it be that this person is an immortal? Another immortal has come to Firmament Star? No, there's no chi refinement aura on him at all. He can't be an immortal. Besides, he's from the divine thought tribe. How could he suddenly become an immortal? It's impossible. Then how do we explain this transformation? That's right. As far as I know, only that immortal can cause such a phenomenon during a Daoist lecture. How did he do it? How could there be such a guy in the human race? Is he really a human? The overgods gathered in the godly mountain. They were all discussing Chu Kuangren. The heavenly Tao transformation had completely shattered their understanding of the world. From what they could remember, the last time the heavenly Tao caused such a huge commotion was during an immortal's Daoist lecture in the previous era. That immortal had left an indelible impression on them. Immortals are too terrifying. Just one attack was enough to put a heavenly master into a deep slumber. If Tsong really is an immortal, then we mustn't provoke him anymore. The underworld god took a deep breath and said, the frost overgod could not help but shudder. After all, he had planted the frost mark on Tsong back then, causing him to suffer from frost chi corrosion. Now that Tsong was so powerful, what should he do if he came to seek revenge? That's not right. If Tsong really is an immortal, why would I plant the frost mark on him back then? The frost overgod frowned and said, the overgods were also confused. Alright, before the heavenly master awakens, let's ignore Tsong for now. Let's focus on observation and find out more about him. A overgod in a silver-white robe said. Hearing his words, everyone nodded slightly. The temporal overgod is right. Let's do as you say. Alright, let's not touch him for now. The temporal overgod was a powerhouse among the 33 overgods, second only to the heavenly master. When the heavenly master was not around, he would be the leader of the overgods. On the other side, in the Yanwu tribe, Chu Kuangren was almost done with his Daoist sermon. Down below, the countless cultivators of the Yanwu tribe were listening in fascination. Even further away, in the mountains, there were also many cultivators listening to him. Some of them had already entered a state of enlightenment. After the lecture ended, everyone seemed as if they wished to continue. They stared at Chu Kuangren helplessly. Don't stop, continue. The more the merrier. We can still listen. The corner of Chu Kuangren's mouth twitched. He had been preaching for a full 3 days this time. Although he had taken the fasting pill beforehand, he could not help but feel thirsty. His body could not take it anymore. Sure enough, this ordinary body was not a good feeling to use. It seemed that he had to find a way to strengthen his physical fitness. It was impossible to cultivate. In any case, after returning to the future, his cultivation would recover. In this era, he planned to focus on improving his soul power. Let's refine some body-strengthening pills. Chu Kuangren thought to himself. This lecture ends here, Yizichen said. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. The lecture ended, and the various phenomena of the heaven Tao dissipated. Everyone sighed, and they could not help but feel a sense of loss. They really hoped that Chu Kuangren could continue. His qi refinement experience was too much of a help to them. If the Immortal's Daoist preaching in the past opened up their macro understanding of cultivation and gave them a general direction for cultivation, then Chu Kuangren's Daoist preaching complemented and perfected many minor details of cultivation. Both were equally important. We thank Lord Song. The cultivators of the Yanwu tribe got up one after another and bowed to Chu Kuangren, their faces filled with deep gratitude. Hearing the Tao in the morning, one can die without regrets. Chu Kuangren's Daoist preaching this time was too much of a help to them. In the distance, the cultivators in the mountains also bowed respectfully to Chu Kuangren and then left. After this lecture, Chu Kuangren's prestige in the Yanwu tribe greatly increased. Countless cultivators regarded him as a teacher. Even the respect of the Yanwu tribe towards Chu Kuangren increased day by day. Even some deity believers gradually entered the ranks of cultivators, and they no longer blindly worshipped the deities as before. Time flew by, and several months had passed. In these few months, in addition to guiding the cultivators in the Yanwu tribe in cultivation, Chu Kuangren also slowly passed on auxiliary skills such as alchemy and equipment refinement, setting off a cultivation revolution. Alchemists, equipment refiners, and so on correspondingly appeared. Chu Kuangren's actions also allowed the Yanwu tribe to continue to grow, earning him a good reputation as a sage. Yanwu tribe. Inside a room. Chu Kuangren took out a pill and swallowed it. The pill turned into a warm current that swept through his body as soon as it entered his stomach, constantly strengthening his physical body so that it was no longer as weak as before. At this time, Chu Kuangren was no longer as sickly as he looked a few months ago. He was full of youthful energy and handsome. A very energetic young man. In addition, his prestige in the Yanwu tribe had been increasing these days, and many young girls in the tribe had fallen in love with him. This made Chu Kuangren a little emotional. I've changed my face, but I'm still so popular. Sure enough, it's all because of my personal charm. However, he still missed his original appearance. If he maxed out his personal charm and appearance, that would be his true self. Although his current body was not bad-looking, it was still not handsome enough compared to his original appearance. Brother Tsang, someone is here to see you. At that moment, Yanwu's emperor's thought came. Got it. Chu Kuangren replied with his emperor's thought. He then went to the great hall. Here, an old man was talking to Yanwu. Upon seeing Chu Kuangren, the old man immediately stood up and walked towards him. He said respectfully, Greetings, Tsang sage. I'm Fenrir. The current Chu Kuangren was known as a sage. After that sermon, when the human cultivators mentioned him, they would all call him a sage to show their respect. Brother Fenrir, you're welcome. Chu Kuangren glanced at Fenrir and could tell that his cultivation level was much higher than Yanwu's. He was an upper heavenly honorable. It was his first time seeing an upper heavenly honorable cultivator in this era. Song Shengxian, I came here mainly for these two items. Fenrir took out a pill and a sword. Oh, is there a problem with these things? Chu Kuangren asked curiously. Seeing his calm expression, Fenrir could not help but take a deep breath and said solemnly, These two things were passed down from the Yanwu tribe. I heard that they were invented by Tsang sage. Yes, the pill is a qi refining pill that can increase a cultivator's cultivation efficiency. The sword is a magic weapon that can increase the cultivator's power through nurturing. Is there a problem? Chu Kuangren smiled. There's a big problem. Upon hearing Chu Kuangren's explanation, Fenrir's breathing gradually quickened. If these two things can be mass-produced, it'll be a great help to the human cultivators. Chapter 773. Equipment Refinement, Alchemy. In this era where most cultivators only knew how to do qi refinement, it was definitely an epic-making cultivation technique. Hence, when Wind Valley saw things like medicinal pills and magical weapons, he was so shocked that it almost shattered his worldview. Now, the inventor, Chu Kuangren, was standing in front of him. Not only that, but he also acted as if he was unfazed, as if he was making a big fuss out of nothing. Wind Valley could not help but feel a little emotional. Chu Kuangren was too extraordinary. Every time he talked about Taoism, It would be like a deluge of heavenly flowers and heavenly transformations. Now that he had casually come up with two new things, it was enough to shock the human cultivators. Is this a sage? He really is from a different dimension than us. Xianxia, I'd like to ask if these two things can be mass-produced? Wind Valley asked expectantly. Of course. That's great. Wind Valley was extremely excited when they got the answer they were waiting for. It's just that I can't produce too many by myself. I'm currently teaching the people of the Yanwu tribe how to refine medicinal pills and equipment. Once they grow up, they can use medicinal pills and magical weapons on the entire human race. Chu Kuangren laughed. Wind Valley was shocked to hear that. Xianxia, what did you say? You plan to teach this technique to others? And it was not just one or two people. It was the entire Yanwu tribe. My abilities alone are limited. I can't refine many medicinal pills and magical weapons. Only with everyone's help can this technique be brought to life. Chu Kuangren said matter-of-factly. Both Wind Valley and Yanwu were instantly filled with respect. After all, Chu Kuangren's equipment and alchemy techniques could be said to be one of a kind in this era. As long as he was willing with these two techniques, he could easily obtain wealth, status, and power. However, he was willing to spread this technique and share it with everyone else for the sake of the entire human race. With such breadth of mind, he truly deserved the title of sage. In Wind Valley, Yanwu's respect and admiration for Chu Kuangren was like a torrential river that flowed endlessly. Xianxia said that his abilities are limited, but from what I can see, Xianxia is turning his limited abilities into infinite possibilities. The human race has Xianxia, the heavens bless the human race. Wind Valley said emotionally. Beside him, Yanwu continuously nodded in agreement. I have seen many people in my life, but most of them are selfish. There are very few who are as selfless as Xianxia, who thinks for the human race wholeheartedly. If the human race had more people like Xianxia, there would be no need to worry about the human race not prospering, and there would be no need to fear the gods. That's right. Sage Tsong's contribution is worthy of the heavenly Tao's testimony. It should be recorded in the annals of human history and praised by future generations. Chu Kuangren felt a little embarrassed when he heard the flattery from both of them. Alchemy and equipment refinement were all things that he had learned in the future. Even without him, the human race would have invented these things sooner or later. You two are being too serious. As a fellow human, this is merely something that I should do. Chu Kuangren hurriedly stopped the two of them from flattering him. If they continued to flatter him like that, he would feel like he was floating. Sage Tsong is indeed a sage. Even after achieving such a feat, he is still so humble. How rare, how rare. I'm convinced. If it was someone else, they would have long been arrogant to the extreme. The heart of a sage is indeed different from that of ordinary people. Chu Kuangren was speechless. Fine, I might as well not say it. On the other hand, Qingyi could not help but show a hint of admiration in his eyes when he saw how Fenrir and Yanwu were flattering Chu Kuangren. These two are really right. Young Master is indeed such a person. After that, Fenrir and Chu Kuangren continued to chat about alchemy and equipment refinement. When he found out that there were different grades of medicinal pills and equipment, and that the medicinal pills and equipment he brought were only of the normal grade, he was extremely shocked. He realized that he had still underestimated the potential of medicinal pills and equipment. If these two items are developed, it will definitely be able to greatly advance the human race's cultivation progress. It will be a great achievement for all eternity. In Fenrir, Yanwu looked at Chu Kuangren with a fiery gaze. The admiration in his eyes were almost gushing out. Chu Kuangren sighed. These two are going to praise me again. Forget it. Come on, praise me hard. I can handle it. However, after a while, he still did not hear anything from the two of them. Chu Kuangren was a little surprised. Why aren't they praising me this time? Fenrir suddenly sighed. Brother Fenrir, why are you sighing? Chu Kuangren could not help but wonder. If they were not going to praise him, then so be it. Why were they sighing? Were they going to scold him? That would be too much. I'm sighing. Why didn't I study hard back then? Now, I can't think of the right words to express Zhang Xingxian's achievements. Fenrir sighed. Beside him, Yanwu shook his head and said, words are no longer enough to describe Zhang Xingxian's great achievements for the human race. Chu Kuangren was speechless. Chu Kuangren was speechless. He did not know what else to say, so he could only go with the flow. Not long after, Fenrir left the Yanwu tribe. He said that he would find some people to learn alchemy and equipment refinement in a few days. Chu Kuangren did not reject him. Yanwu did not reject him either. Fenrir's identity was not simple. He was one of the strong people behind the human race, so he could not reject him even if he wanted to. After Fenrir left the Yanwu tribe, he came to a dark valley. At the end of the valley stood a towering pavilion. A letter, to the reverse god pavilion. He walked into the pavilion, and candles were lit up in the dark against the god pavilion, illuminating a dozen silhouettes. Fenrir, did you see Tsong during your trip to the Yanwu tribe? An indifferent voice was heard. I did. Oh, what do you think of him? This person truly lives up to his name as a sage. In fact, if I may say something disrespectful, I think this person is more outstanding than any sage in history, Fenrir said solemnly. The people in the reverse god pavilion could not help but be shocked at his words. You have such an evaluation of him? No, this is not my evaluation. This should be the evaluation of the future generations. In this era, no one has the right to evaluate him. The crowd could not help but fall silent for a while. Fenrir, don't you think you're exaggerating? Not at all. After that, Fenrir took out some medicinal pills and magic weapons and recounted his meeting with Chu Kuangren. After listening, the crowd once again fell into silence. After a while, a voice was heard. Sage Tsong, what a great person. If what Fenrir said is true, then his generosity and achievements are indeed worthy to be recorded in the annals of history and be remembered by the future generations. These magic weapons and medicinal pills are of great help to human cultivators. What kind of genius is this? How deep must his understanding of cultivation be to be able to create such a technique? I heard that when this person was preaching, a phenomenon that only happens when immortals preach about Taoism appeared. I didn't believe it at first, but now I'm convinced. I must be on good terms with this person. This Tsong is of great importance to the human race. We must pay close attention to this person. If he needs any help, try your best to satisfy him. After hearing Fenrir's story, the human cultivators of the reverse god pavilion came to a consensus that they must be on good terms with Chu Kuangren. Chapter 774. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the God Tier 9 Transformations Tri-Elemental Soul Refinement Technique. On this day, Chu Kuangren had just finished drawing his rewards. The cultivation technique that he obtained caused him to reveal an expression of surprise. It was another God Tier cultivation technique. This was his second time obtaining a God Tier technique. The last time he obtained it was the Immortal Stellar Physique. The soul refinement technique sounded like a technique related to the soul. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up. He had been wanting to focus on cultivating the soul, and it just so happened that he had obtained a God-tier technique related to the soul. That was great. Chu Kuangren could not wait to retrieve the technique. Suddenly, a large amount of mysteries surfaced in his mind. After a while, he had completely absorbed the God-tier technique in his mind. What a great 9 transformations tri-elemental soul refinement technique. This technique is not inferior to the Immortal Stellar Physique. In fact, it's even better. This God-tier technique is amazing. Chu Kuangren knew that at his level of cultivation, there were not many things in this world that could shock him. However, this 9 transformations tri-elemental soul refinement technique was so mysterious that even he could not help but exclaim in admiration. The 9 transformations tri-elemental soul refinement technique was indeed a technique that specialized in cultivating the soul. The 9 transformations referred to the 9 realms of this technique. The 3 realms referred to the cultivation process of this technique. This cultivation technique could allow one to cultivate 3 souls. That's right, 3 souls. The 3 souls were heaven, earth, and human. Cultivating one soul into three? Such a thing was almost unimaginable. However, this technique could be achieved by cultivating 3 souls and then merging them together. After repeating this process 9 times, this technique would be considered complete and the soul would reach the immortal realm. Cultivate. Without another word, Chu Kuangren began to cultivate this technique. His soul energy was now very strong, so he could cultivate it all the way to the 3rd transformation in one go. Very quickly, his soul power began to split apart, transforming into a soul body that looked exactly the same. This was the Earth Soul. Soon, the human soul was also separated. Chu Kuangren sat with his legs crossed. Above his head, the 3 Bodhi souls in the form of the heaven, earth, and human souls looked at each other. Chu Kuangren's heavenly soul greeted the Earth Soul and human soul. Although this cultivation technique could split a soul into 3, there was only one original soul. That was the heavenly soul. This would also ensure that the 3 souls would not suddenly fight for some reason. It would be awkward if they killed themselves. Hello. The Earth Soul nodded slightly. This feeling is truly marvelous. The human souls looked at the heaven souls, and the Earth souls could not help but click their tongues in wonder. The 3 souls had the same consciousness and memories, but they were also independent of each other. This feeling was too wonderful. I'm talking to myself now. Why do I feel like I have split personality disorder? Tianhun said playfully. Strictly speaking, the 3 of us have the same personality, so it doesn't count as a split personality. The Earth Soul couldn't help but correct him. Alright, that's enough chit-chat. Let's fuse. The human soul said. The man soul and the Earth Soul turned into 2 rays of light and quickly merged into the heaven soul's body, fusing into one soul again. The first revolution of the 9 revolutions' 3 elements was complete. Chu Kuangren once again activated the 9 transformations' 3 elemental soul refinement technique. He then split into 3 souls. Hi, we meet again. The heaven soul greeted. Can you stop being naughty? The Earth Soul rolled its eyes. Aren't I you? The Earth Soul could not refute. I feel like my soul energy has grown a little stronger. The human soul said. Not only in quantity, but the quality has also become pure. The Earth Soul felt its own soul energy and said, let's fuse. The Earth Soul and the human soul once again fused into the heaven soul. The 3 souls fused into one, and the 2nd revolution was complete. Then came the 3rd revolution. The 3 souls were formed again. Hello, you guys. Cut the crap. Let's fuse. The 3 souls fused again, and the 3rd revolution was complete. When the 3rd revolution was completed, Chu Kuangren felt that his soul energy had increased a lot. No, it was not only his soul energy, but his perception and understanding of the Tao had also increased. This 9 revolutions 3 elements refinement technique is incredible. Not only can it improve soul energy, but it can also improve one's perception. Wait a minute, does that mean that when I study techniques in the future, there will be 3 of me? Chu Kuangren suddenly thought of something and was speechless. He channeled the soul refinement technique and wanted to proceed to the 4th revolution. However, after half a day, all that was produced was a gray ball of soul fire. That was the soul fire of the Earth Soul. However, there was still a long way to go before it could take shape. Have I reached my limit? Chu Kuangren murmured. He could quickly complete the first 3 revolutions because his soul energy had reached the requirements, but the 4th revolution would not be so easy. In order to refine an Earth Soul, he had to double his current soul power. 3 souls meant 3 times the amount of soul force. Being able to quickly cultivate the first 3 revolutions is already a huge gain. I'll take my time with the 4th revolution, Chu Kuangren said. His soul returned to his physical body and he opened his eyes. His emperor's thoughts surged and quickly covered the entire Yanwu tribe. From the conversations of the people, he found out that he had spent a month cultivating the 9 revolutions 3 elements refinement technique. Wind Valley had already returned, and they even brought a group of cultivators with them to learn alchemy and equipment crafting. I guess I'll meet them then. Chu Kuangren walked out of his room and found the Yanwu tribe and Wind Valley. Song Sage, you're finally out. The Yenwu tribe and Wind Valley greeted him. They did not know if it was an illusion, but Wind Valley felt that although Chu Kuangren still had no cultivation, he seemed to have become more mysterious. Good heavens! It's only been a month and there's already such a change. The sage is indeed a sage. Wind Valley's eyes were filled with respect. Yes, Brother Wind Valley, I've heard about the people you've brought. From now on, let them stay in the Yenwu tribe to learn alchemy and equipment crafting. Chu Kuangren smiled. Thank you, sage. After that, Chu Kuangren went to meet the cultivators from Wind Valley. All of these cultivators were the cream of the crop among the humans. If they were to be placed in the afterworld, they would all be top-notch sky prides. Chu Kuangren frowned and said, alchemy and equipment crafting are not as simple as qi refinement. You need to invest a lot of time and effort into it. If you're distracted, you'll only achieve nothing. Hence, this will delay your progress in qi refinement. I hope you'll consider this carefully before you make a decision. Upon hearing that, the cultivators looked at each other and hesitated. Song Sage, is there no way to have the best of both worlds? Unless you're an extremely talented person, I suggest that you focus on one path of cultivation. If you feel that you're not suited for qi refinement, you can try out equipment crafting or alchemy, Chu Kuangren said. Looks like I've been too greedy, Wind Valley said. You can't have your cake and eat it too. How can you have everything you want? After all, how many Song sages were there in this world? I want to stay here. At that moment, a cultivator said. It was a young, brawny man. His cultivation level was not considered outstanding among the group. In fact, it could even be said that he was at the bottom. He held an iron sword in his hand and looked at Chu Kuangren with an infatuated look in his eyes. He then said seriously, Sage, I want to learn equipment crafting. Chapter 775. Sage, I want to learn how to craft equipment. The young man said to Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren looked at the young man and narrowed his eyes. He felt that this man looked familiar. Where had he seen him before? The more he looked at him, the more familiar he felt. What's your name? My name is Scarlet Sunday, Scarlet Sun. Chu Kuangren remembered now. Wasn't this the Scarlet Sun Daoist master, one of the 24 Daoist masters? Was he the one who taught him how to craft equipment? The affairs of the world were too wonderful. He suddenly remembered that his descendant's self-sword was still with him. He wondered how it was doing now. It should have been reforged by now. If you want to learn how to craft equipment, then stay. Chu Kuangren smiled gently. Then some people stayed while others left. A sage had appeared in the Yenwu tribe. The news spread like wildfire, and countless tribes sent people to investigate. Although only a few of them managed to see Chu Kuangren, the Yenwu tribe's growth was undeniable. The sage's words were confirmed. Time flew by, and a few months had passed. These few months were not long, but the changes that they brought to the Yenwu tribe were unprecedented, comparable to the passage of time. Besides the increase in the number of cultivators, cultivation methods such as alchemy and equipment crafting had greatly improved the cultivation conditions of the cultivators in the tribe. As a result, many human cultivators were attracted to join the tribe. There were 10 major tribes in the firmament star. Among them, the strongest was called the Star Slayer tribe. Although the Yenwu tribe was also one of the 10 major tribes, it was the weakest. However, Chu Kuangren's arrival had increased the strength of the Yenwu tribe by leaps and bounds. Vaguely, they were already catching up to the Star Slayer tribe. In the Star Slayer tribe, a middle-aged man sat on a leather chair. The man was tall and sturdy, and his eyes were bright like the stars. This man was the leader of the Star Slayer tribe, Slayer Star. Slayer Star was extraordinary. He was known as the wisest leader in the history of the human race. Under his leadership, the Star Slayer tribe slowly grew from a small tribe of 1,000 people to the leader of the human race today. Hence, Slayer Star was the most legendary human of this era. But strictly speaking, he was only half a human, because he was the son of a human god. They were the offspring born from the union of man and God. In this land where humans and gods lived together, The union between humans and gods was not that rare. If some gods fancied some human women, they could also take them as their own. In the eyes of many humans, this was an honor. However, due to the difference in physique between humans and gods, it was basically impossible for their union to produce offspring. However, Xianxia was an accident. In the long history of the human race, there was only one case of this happening in the history of the gods. It was precisely because of this uniqueness that Xianxia had been the center of attention the moment he was born, growing up amidst the expectations of countless people. The gods wanted to use him to control the human race, and the human race saw him as a gift from the gods. They took good care of him and waited for him to grow up to be their master. Xianxia did not disappoint them. The bloodline of a god had given him great power, allowing him to easily conquer all the tribes. The bloodline of a human had allowed him to train his qi and cultivate, constantly improving his strength. Not even the gods could do such a thing. Interesting stuff. Xianxia was currently holding an elixir and a weapon in his hands. His eyes shone brightly. It's said that a sage has appeared in the Yanwu tribe. It looks like that's really the case. Beside him, a muscular man wearing tiger skin said, "Chief, if the Yanwu tribe continues to develop like this, it will definitely become a threat to us in the future. Should we find someone to get rid of that sage?" The muscular man didn't care about the sage. In his eyes, anyone who threatened the chief or threatened his tribe deserved to die. Hearing the muscular man's words, Xianxia said indifferently, "There's no need for that for now. However, we can fight for this sage. Send someone with generous gifts to the Yanwu tribe and ask if he's willing to come to our Zhan Star tribe to develop." Not long after, the Zhan Star tribe sent out an emissary. This emissary was very arrogant and didn't care about the development of the Yanwu tribe. In his eyes, although the Yanwu tribe was also one of the 10 major tribes, it was far inferior to the Zhan Star tribe. He walked on the streets of the Yanwu tribe with 2 followers behind him. Looking at the tribesmen dressed in coarse linen clothes around him, his eyes revealed disdain. How can a sage be born in a place like this? He shook his head. People nowadays tend to exaggerate. Just a little bit of merit and they'll be called a sage. How many sages have there been in the human race for so many years? If there really is a sage in this era, it'll be our chief. He's the son of the gods. Only then can he bear the title of sage. When the Yanwu tribe guard who was leading the way heard him, he couldn't help but frown with a dissatisfied look on his face. During this period of time, Chu Kuangren's prestige in the tribe had been growing day by day. Of course, they couldn't stand others slandering him. However, the person in front of him was an emissary from the Zhan Star tribe, which was the largest tribe in the human race. Clang, clang, clang. At that moment, the sound of metal clanking came from somewhere on the street. The Zhan Star emissary frowned and said, "What's that noise? It's so noisy, it's annoying." He walked towards the direction of the sound. All he saw was a brawny man holding a hammer in his hand. He was hammering on a red-hot piece of metal repeatedly. So, that piece of metal gradually changed shape and became a long strip. "What are they doing?" "They're refining weapons," the Yanwu tribe guard said. The Zhan Star emissary looked around and noticed that there were several racks with weapons on them. Any one of those weapons was more outstanding than the best weapons in the Zhan Star tribe. There was a sharp glint on them that sent chills down one's spine. There were also strange patterns on them. He gulped, picked up a sword, and injected his spiritual energy into it. A sword ray suddenly shot out from the sword, and with a casual slash, it tore a deep sword mark on the ground. The Zhan Star emissary's pupils shrank. In the past, he would have to use at least 30% of his strength to leave a sword mark like that. However, he did it without using even 1% of his strength just now. This weapon is too amazing. He looked at the weapons on display in front of him as if he was looking at a treasure. Then he picked up a long sword and tried it. It also had the same effect of increasing his spiritual energy. "What are you doing?" Qi Yang, who was refining weapons, glanced at the Zhan Star emissary. The Zhan Star emissary immediately said respectfully, "Sir, may I ask if this is the so-called refining method?" "That's right." Are there many refiners like you, sir? It's all right. I've only learned it not long ago. Qi Yang said casually. Hearing this, the Zhan Star emissary was dumbfounded. I've only learned it not long ago, yet I can already create a bunch of divine weapons. What kind of level has the legendary sage who created this refining method reached? At this moment, the contempt in his heart was swept away, and he felt unprecedented fear towards this sage who he had never met before. If such a person can't be used by the Zhan Star tribe, he will definitely become the tribe's biggest enemy. Chapter 776. After witnessing the wonders of the equipment refinement technique, the Star Slayer envoy was shocked when he saw someone refining pills along the way. He became more and more fearful of Chu Kuangren, whom he had never met before. Soon he arrived at the tribe's great hall. Here, he met the Yanwu tribe's leader, Yanwu. Greetings, envoy. Greetings, tribe leader Yanwu. I'm here to meet the sage of your tribe. Can you introduce me to him? Of course. Yanwu nodded. Not long after, Chu Kuangren found out about the Star Slayer envoy. When the Star Slayer envoy saw the skinny young man in front of him, he could not help but be confused. In his mind, the sage who could create the equipment refinement technique and alchemy technique should be a sage-like old man. How could it be a young man? Moreover, he did not sense any traces of qi refinement from Chu Kuangren. Were the techniques of alchemy and equipment refinement created by this person? If not for Yanwu's respectful attitude towards Chu Kuangren, he would have suspected that Chu Kuangren was lying to him. Are you Tsang sage? Greetings, envoy. I'm Tsang, but I'm not worthy of being called a sage. If the equipment refinement technique and alchemy technique were really invented by you, then you're worthy of the title of sage. Yanwu frowned when he heard the Star Slayer envoy's words. Envoy, what do you mean? The equipment refinement technique and alchemy technique were created by Tsang sage. Are you suspecting something? The Star Slayer envoy smiled. Yanwu tribe leader, you misunderstand me. I don't mean to offend you. It's just that Tsang sage's age is really hard to believe. That's why I asked. The equipment refinement technique and alchemy technique have never been seen before. There's no doubt that it was created by our young master. Green-robed envoy scoffed. It's unheard of in the human race, but not necessarily in the celestial race. The Star Slayer envoy said meaningfully. Envoy, are you trying to say that I'm related to the deities? Chu Kuangren chuckled. Ridiculous. Everyone knows that our young master is a god slayer, yet you think he's related to the deities? Green-robed envoy sneered. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. This time, I have come under the orders of my tribe's leader to invite Song Xian to work in my Star Slayer tribe. Yanwu frowned slightly. Good heavens, he's here to snatch my corner. I appreciate leader Star Slayer's good intentions, but I'm having a good time here, so I won't be going over there to chat. Song Xian, you should know that the Slayer Star tribe is the strongest tribe of the human race. Only there will you be able to display your talents to your heart's content. Furthermore, you should have heard of the origins of my leader, the Slayer Star tribe. He is the son of the human god, the spokesperson of the god. As long as he speaks, the matter of you killing the god will also be resolved. The Star Slayer envoy said patiently. However, Chu Kuangren did not budge at all. He did not say anything more to the other party either. Instead, he simply said to Yanwu, Clan leader, I still have some matters to attend to. I'll leave the envoy to you. Then he left with Qing. Song, are you really going to be so ungrateful? The Star Slayer emissary said to Chu Kuangren from behind. However, Chu Kuangren had already left without looking back. Emissary, is there anything else? If you don't, then please leave, Yanwu said indifferently. It would be strange if Chu Kuangren had a good attitude after trying to snatch his corner right in front of him. Yanwu tribe, you're on your own now. The Star Slayer emissary snorted before he flicked his sleeves and left. Inside the Star Slayer tribe. That's what happened. The Star Slayer emissary recounted his meeting with Chu Kuangren. They actually rejected him? The Star Slayer emissary sat on a chair, his fingers subconsciously tapping on the chair's armrest. He said indifferently, "Tell me, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? In my opinion, we should just send out our troops. I don't believe that the Yanwu tribe alone can do anything." The muscular man in the tiger pelt said. His body emanated a towering ferocious chi. One look and anyone could tell that he was a man who had experienced hundreds of battles. "That's right, it's time for this tribal separatist situation to end. Now that our Star Slayer tribe has a strong army, it's time to swallow up the other tribes," another white-robed man said. When the Star Slayer emissary heard that, he looked at the Yanwu tribe's emissary. "You've been to the Yanwu tribe. What's your opinion?" The emissary pondered for a moment before he said, "Alchemy and equipment refinement techniques are not to be underestimated. Moreover, although Tsang is young, if these two techniques were really created by him, he's definitely not someone to be trifled with. In time, the Yanwu tribe will become a huge threat to us. Do you also agree to send out your troops?" The Star Slayer emissary pondered. He was not afraid of the Yanwu tribe. It was just that the Star Slayer tribe's current strength was more than enough to deal with one tribe. However, there were 10 major human tribes. If he were to attack the Yanwu tribe, the other tribes might take the opportunity to attack. After all, the Star Slayer tribe had been growing stronger over the years. It had long agitated the other tribes, making them restless. "What are you hesitating about?" At that moment, an indifferent voice was heard. Suddenly, a golden pillar of light descended from the sky. A vast divine aura enveloped the entire area. Apart from Star Slayer, everyone else was pressed to the ground by this divine aura and could not move at all. Within the beam of light, a figure gradually appeared. He wore golden armor and held a golden spear in his hand. His stern and cold face exuded a sense of majesty. "Greetings, Father." Star Slayer hurriedly stood up and bowed. The person before him was one of the 33 Master Gods, the Vajra Master God. He was also Star Slayer's father. Years ago, when the Vajra Master God traveled the world, he passed by a tribe. In order to entertain him, the tribe sent out the most beautiful woman in the tribe to spend a night with him. Who knew that Star Slayer would be born that night? He was the only human in countless years, the son of God. In the past decade or so, the Vajra Master God was also very surprised when he learned of Star Slayer's existence. At first, he did not pay much attention to it. However, later on, he realized that Star Slayer contained immense potential. Having divine power and the ability to cultivate was the best weapon for him to conquer the human race. Hence, he had been deliberately nurturing Star Slayer. Yes, Song of the Yanwu tribe has killed many gods consecutively. His existence has provoked the authority of the gods, so the gods have decided to grant him and his tribe death. "I'll leave this matter to you," the Vajra Master God said. Star Slayer was very powerful. He could be said to be one of the most powerful beings aside from the Master Gods. He could even fight a few rounds with the lower-ranked Master Gods. Sending him to fight Song was the common decision of the gods. They wanted to use Star Slayer to see what kind of person Chu Kuangren was. "The gods will, huh? I understand now." Star Slayer nodded slightly. Initially, he was worried that the other tribes would take advantage of the situation to attack Yanwu tribe. However, it was the gods who sent him to fight Yanwu tribe. No matter how bold the other tribes were, they would not dare to offend the gods. Soon, news of the Star Slayer tribe receiving the gods' will to fight Yanwu tribe spread throughout the world. Chapter 777. The news of the Star Slayer tribe attacking the Yanwu tribe quickly spread throughout the land, and the Yanwu tribe naturally received the news as well. For a moment, the entire Yanwu tribe was in a state of panic. Even if the Yanwu tribe's strength had increased a lot, the Star Slayer tribe was still the strongest among the 10 tribes. They had a strong army, and no human tribe could compete with them. More importantly, the leader of the Star Slayer tribe was the son of a human deity. In the eyes of the people, he was the representative of the deities. Going against him was almost like going against the deities. Facing the deities, Their morale was already weakened by 70 to 80% before they even fought. How could they fight? Leader, what should we do now? Yes, the Star Slayer tribe has more than 10 million warriors, and many of them are cultivators. The Star Slayer himself has divine strength and is invincible. I'm afraid we're no match for them. Yes, I heard that a few years ago, a cultivator went to find the Star Slayer, but he was cut in half by the Windcutter sword that was given by the deities. He did not even have the strength to fight back. Why don't we surrender? Surrender my ass. I'd rather fight them than be a coward. But they still want to fight even if they know they're going to die. This is called reckless, and it's not worth it to lose your life for nothing. How do you know we can't win if we haven't fought them before? The higher-ups of the Yanwu tribe discussed among themselves. Among them, the number 1 warrior, Atu, was arguing with an old man. One of them wanted to fight, and the other wanted to surrender. Yanwu felt a headache coming on as he watched. I didn't expect this day to come so soon. Yanwu murmured. When he invited Chu Kuangren to join the Yanwu tribe, he already had a premonition that they would one day go against the deities. However, this day came too soon. Moreover, they were not facing the deities, but the Star Slayer tribe, which was also a human. It was obvious that they wanted them to kill each other. Everyone, please calm down. At that moment, a cold voice rang out. A young man in a white cloak walked in. When he spoke, there was a mysterious Daoist fluctuation. Everyone's restless emotions were slowly calmed down. It was Chu Kuangren. Greetings, Sage Song. Does the sage have any countermeasures against the Star Slayer tribe? Chu Kuangren chuckled at the crowd's questions. It's not really a response. I'll just deal with whatever comes my way. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. What kind of response was that? Let's deal with the ever-changing by remaining constant, Chu Kuangren added. With his current strength, he wasn't afraid of any tribesman coming to find trouble with him. In fact, if someone came to find trouble with him, he would be happy to see it happen. It was the perfect time for him to fight and make a name for himself. He was going to be a king in the future. Just the name of a sage was not enough. What he needed was a solid battle record. Only by displaying sufficient strength could he consolidate his current prestige. Song Xianxia, do you really have the ability to deal with the Star Slayer tribe? Yanwu asked curiously. Rest assured, Patriarch. Chu Kuangren chuckled. He activated his psyche power and activated the illusory 7 emotion song. This cultivation method could manipulate one's emotions. Under his influence, the panic in everyone's eyes gradually disappeared and was replaced by determination. We believe in Sage Tsang. Yes, the Star Slayer tribe will definitely win. The other side. In the God-defying pavilion. Wind Valley, the Star Slayer tribe is going to attack the Yanwu tribe. Go see if Sage Tsang needs any help. The Star Slayer tribe is going to attack Sage Tsang now? We can't just sit back and watch. Wind Valley nodded solemnly. Star Slayer, is that the son of God? All right, I'll go check it out. There was no time to lose. Wind Valley immediately headed to the Yanwu tribe. At first, he thought that he would see a depressed tribe. After all, everyone was about to face the strongest of the 10 major tribes, the Star Slayer tribe. It was normal for them to be afraid. However, when he arrived at the Yanwu tribe, he realized that everyone was doing what they were supposed to do. Everything was orderly and thriving. There was no sign of danger at all. Has the Yanwu tribe not received the news? Wind Valley asked curiously. That should not be the case. The news had already spread throughout the land. He grabbed a passing cultivator and asked curiously, Fellow Daoist, do you know that the Star Slayer tribe is going to attack you soon? Of course I do. The news has already spread. The cultivator looked at Wind Valley strangely as if to say, it can't be, it can't be. You don't even know about such a big thing? If that's the case, aren't you afraid? Wind Valley asked again. With Sage Tsang here, what do we have to be afraid of? Besides, what's the use of being afraid? If we were afraid, wouldn't the Star Slayer tribe come to attack us? That's impossible. The sage said that the best way to eliminate fear is to face it. As long as we face it calmly and work together, There's nothing we can't overcome. The cultivator raised his head and puffed out his chest as he spoke in a natural manner. When he mentioned the sage, his eyes unconsciously revealed a look of worship. Wind Valley was a little confused. This cultivator's words made him unable to refute. What did the sage do? Did he brainwash these people? Fear was the most ancient emotion of humans. However, in the face of the Star Slayer tribe's attack, Wind Valley did not see any fear in the eyes of the people from the Yenwu tribe. It was as if they had been blocked by something. Wind Valley found Yenwu. He carefully observed Yenwu and realized that he was not as optimistic as the others about the Star Slayer tribe's attack. Although he did not feel any fear, he could still see the seriousness in his expression. Wind Valley breathed a sigh of relief. Is this how a normal person should react? If even the higher-ups of the Yenwu tribe were so optimistic, Wind Valley wondered if the tribe was finished. Where's Sage Tsang? He's resting in the yard. All right, I'll wait for him here then. Wind Valley said. In a yard. Under the shade of a tree, Qin Yi was cultivating. Beside her, Chu Kuangren made a deck chair out of tree branches. He lay on it with his eyes closed. These few days, the news of the Star Slayer tribe's attack had caused the people of the Yenwu tribe to panic. Fortunately, Chu Kuangren appeared to calm the people and used the 7 Emotions illusory song to control their emotions. That was the reason why they did not cause any trouble. As for the higher-ups of the Yenwu tribe, he did not overdo it with the 7 Emotions illusory song. After all, the lower-ranked people of a tribe could maintain a positive and optimistic attitude and even blindly follow others. However, as the higher-ups of the tribe, the leaders had to remain clear-headed and not be too affected. After this incident, it could be said that he had gained a deeper understanding of the application of the illusory 7 Emotions song. Soon he met with Wind Valley. When the other party asked him what help he needed, he only asked the people of the God-defying pavilion to stay put. Now was not the time to expose the human tribe's true strength. Chapter 778. I don't want to admit it, but the Slayer Star is very powerful. It can be said that on this piece of land, other than the overgods, no other deities, humans, or wild beasts are a match for him. Not only does this person possess divine strength, but he is also proficient in Qi refinement. Divine strength aside, his Qi refinement strength alone has already reached the level of an upper heavenly honorable. Song Shengxian, are you sure you can defeat him? Fenrir said solemnly. He glanced at Chu Kuangren. There was still no trace of Qi refinement on his opponent. Although mind power was very mysterious, Fenrir still felt a little uncertain. Of course. Chu Kuangren smiled calmly. A Slayer Star was not worthy of his attention. Not long after, the vast army of the Slayer Star tribe was approaching the warrior Flame tribe. From afar, there were soldiers armed with swords and spears, mounted on all kinds of wild beasts, and even people beating drums. The sound of drums was like thunder, shaking the heavens and earth. The might of this army was boundless. Before they even got close to the warrior Flame tribe, their ferocious Qi had already engulfed them. The guarding Qiong Qi, Thunder Beast, and other wild beasts could not help but tremble in fear. They had no intention of fighting back. How terrifying! Has the human race developed to this stage? Over the years, with the popularization of cultivation techniques, the human race is no longer as weak as they used to be. I just didn't expect them to develop to this stage. How surprising! The few wild beasts were conversing. Behind them was the Yenwu tribe's army that was also on standby, and the one who stood at the forefront was none other than Chu Kuangren. He looked into the distance and vaguely saw a magnificent golden chariot in front of the Slayer Star tribe. The chariot was pulled by 9 Qiongqi beasts, and on the chariot sat a mighty man dressed in golden armor. He sat upright on a large chair made of animal skin, holding a large sword in his hand, and his eyes were slightly closed. He sat very steadily, like a statue. Although his eyes were closed, his aura was extremely terrifying. Looks like he's the Slayer Star. Shao AI, analyze it. Chu Kuangren said in his heart. The spirit of omniscience was activated. Information about the Slayer star kept appearing in his mind. The human god's child. With the combination of the King Kong deity's strength and qi refinement, it's no wonder he's undefeatable. Chu Kuangren chuckled. If Chu Kuangren had not appeared, Zhan Xing would have had a high chance of becoming the leader of the human race. Other than his strength, there was also the fact that he had the support of the deities behind him. Based on that alone, not many people could compete with him. Even the current god-defying pavilion did not have enough power. After a while, the Star Slayer tribe's army arrived in front of the Yanwu tribe. There were at least a few million people. An army of this scale was very rare in this era, not to mention that there were many cultivators among them. The people of the Yanwu tribe gripped their weapons tightly. Those with weaker mental fortitude were so scared that their faces were pale, and their bodies could not help but tremble. Can we really win against such an army? Some of the soldiers' hearts were already wavering. Even Yanwu and Fenrir could not help but wear a solemn expression. Everyone, don't be afraid. We still have Zhang Xingxian. A soldier said. Hearing this, everyone looked at the white figure standing at the front. Chu Kuangren had a white cloak draped over his shoulders. His body looked a little frail, but his posture was more imposing than anyone else's. Her posture gave off a reassuring feeling. The sage is indeed a sage. He can still be so calm in the face of an army of this scale. It's as if he doesn't care about them at all. That's right, he's too amazing. Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren's back with admiration in their eyes. The sage's calmness makes us feel more at ease. Yanwu chuckled. It's just a small scene. Chu Kuangren smiled. Hearing his words, Yanwu and Fenrir's mouths twitched a few times. Was this considered a small scene? What was a big scene then? The sage was indeed a sage. There was no way they could compare. In fact, Chu Kuangren did not care about the army in front of him at all. Whether it was in terms of size, strength, equipment, or any other aspect, this army was not worth mentioning to him. After seeing the hundreds of millions of soldiers and warships in the extraterrestrial battlefield, this army was no different from playing house to him. The Star Slayer tribe's army stopped in front of the Yanwu tribe. A man rode out on a ferocious beast and said loudly, "We are here on the orders of the deities to attack the Yanwu tribe. However, the deities are merciful. As long as you surrender and hand over the god Slayer Zhang, the deities promise to let you live." His words caused a commotion in the crowd. Yanwu stood up and said, "Sage Zhang taught us human alchemy and equipment refinement techniques. He also saved the Yanwu tribe's life. We will never hand him over to the deities. If you want to fight, then let's fight." Fight, fight. The Yanwu tribe's army roared. Chu Kuangren preached in the Yanwu tribe, teaching them cultivation techniques, equipment refinement, and alchemy. He also taught them some survival experiences such as smelting, weaving, terraced farming, irrigation, and so on. In the Yanwu tribe, from the cultivators to the commoners, everyone respected him. It could even be said that Chu Kuangren had successfully replaced the deities and become their new faith, asking them to surrender their faith. How was that possible? Stubborn. The person who persuaded them to surrender snorted and walked back to the army. Then, a person walked out from the army. That person was wearing a tiger's skin and had a fierce aura. "Since you refuse to surrender, then die. I am the Star Slayer tribe's Wuxia. Who dares to come out and fight me?" Yanwu's eyes were solemn. This person is the Star Slayer tribe's #1 warrior, Wuxia. He's strong enough to become an emperor. An emperor was considered an expert no matter what era it was. In the original Yanwu tribe, there was only one emperor, Yanwu. "I'll go and fight him." Beside Yanwu, Atu, who was wearing a black armor and holding a long spear, said eagerly, "Atu, you've just become an emperor. I'm afraid you're no match for this person." Yanwu was still worried. Atu, the Yanwu tribe's #1 warrior, had become an emperor under Chu Kuangren's guidance. However, his cultivation level was still far from being comparable to Wuxia, who had been an emperor for many years. "Let him try." Chu Kuangren chuckled. "Huh, even the sage has faith in me." Tu laughed. He took a step forward and arrived in front of Wuxia. The emperor's qi on his body circulated, and a domineering aura erupted. "Someone, tell me your name." Wuxia sneered. "Yanwu tribe's #1 warrior, Atu." Tu said loudly. "Judging by your aura, you must have just broken through to the emperor realm not too long ago. With your strength, you're no match for me." Wuxia sneered as he slashed out with a long saber in his hand. Atu stabbed out with his long spear too. The long sword and long spear clashed. Even though Atu's cultivation level was not as high as Wuxia's, he was still evenly matched with his opponent. "How's this possible?" Wuxia's expression changed. Then he roared and swung the long sword in his hand, clashing with Atu's long spear. Wuxia's battle technique was brilliant. It did not take long for him to find an opening and slash Atu's body, sending him flying. "Humph, that's all you got?" Wuxia snorted. "Are you tickling me, your grandpa Atu?" At that moment, Atu stood up and said in scathe. Upon seeing this, the soldiers of the Star Slasher tribe widened their eyes. Chapter 779. How can this be? This person took a strike from General Baleful Tiger and is completely fine. This is impossible. Yeah, how did he do it? There's actually such an expert in the Yanwu tribe? The people of the Star Slayer tribe were shocked. Wuxia himself was in disbelief. Then he thought of something and looked at Atu's armor. This must be the legendary refining method. Unbelievable. He had figured everything out. The opponent was able to block his strike because of the protection of the armor. Also, the opponent's cultivation base was clearly lower than his, but they were evenly matched. It was most likely because of the spear in his hand. Hee, this is the sage's method. Atu patted the armor on his body and chuckled. In terms of cultivation base, he was inferior to Wuxia. But in terms of equipment, even 10 Wuxia couldn't compare to him. "Let's see how many strikes you can take." Wuxia snorted coldly and once again charged forward with his long blade. Clang, clang, cling. The sound of metal clashing rang out incessantly. The two of them fought until dust flew everywhere. Dao patterns weaved in the air and a powerful aura rippled outwards. Boom! A figure was sent flying while vomiting blood. It was Wuxia. Just now, Atu didn't retreat or evade, forcefully taking a strike from him in exchange for an opening and heavily injuring him. Damn it, damn it. Wuxia was enraged, the baleful qi on his body surged crazily. He was the #1 warrior of the Star Slayer tribe, the strongest person apart from Xianxia, yet he was suppressed by a guy who had just stepped into the Emperor realm not long ago. Moreover, it was in front of his army. "Wuxia, stand down." Xianxia, who was sitting on the chariot, said. "Chief, I can still fight." Wuxia said hatefully. "I said stand down." Xianxia's tone became colder. Wuxia's heart trembled, not daring to disobey. He looked at Atu unwillingly and returned to the army. Although he didn't want to admit it, he knew that if he continued to fight, he might not be able to gain the upper hand. Hee, Chief Xianxia, your tribe's #1 warrior has been defeated. But do you want to come down personally? Atu pointed his spear at Xianxia and said arrogantly. Defeating Wuxia gave him a lot of confidence. "Ignorant ant, you're courting death," Xianxia said indifferently. Then he suddenly opened his eyes and a majestic force instantly gushed out like a tsunami. The strength of this force caused Atu's pupils to constrict. He couldn't block it. He absolutely could not block this power. Even the armor he was wearing didn't give him the slightest sense of security. Was this the power of the strongest tribe leader? It was too terrifying. They weren't even on the same level. "I will die." Atu's pupils trembled and he was unable to move. He could only watch as the force was about to land on him. Just when he thought he was going to die, a gentle breeze suddenly blew past him. Miraculously, that overwhelming force actually dissipated completely in front of this gentle breeze. Atu heaved a sigh of relief. His body went limp and he almost collapsed. But at this moment, a hand was placed on his shoulder from behind, supporting him. A cold voice sounded, "Everyone is watching. If you fall like this, it will be very embarrassing." Song Xing sage. Atu turned around and saw Chu Kuangren's calm face. An unprecedented sense of security suddenly surged into his heart. He knew that Chu Kuangren must have saved him just now. Alright, leave this to me. You can go back first. Chu Kuangren said. Song Xing sage, you must be careful. Alright. Atu turned around and returned to the Yanwu tribe. Now, Chu Kuangren was the only one left to face the million-strong army. Compared to them, he was too insignificant. To be able to block my attack, Song Xing sage lives up to his name, Zhan Xing said as he sat on the chariot. Then he said, I've seen the weapon crafting technique that you've invented. To think that it could allow an ordinary emperor to defeat the strongest warrior under my command. It's indeed an impressive technique. Thank you for the compliment. It's a pity that you're an enemy of the gods, so I can't use you. That's why you can't continue to live. But don't worry, I'll make good use of the alchemy and weapon crafting techniques that you've taught me. Heh, you don't have to worry about that. What's wrong? Does Song Xing sage really think that he can block my million-strong elite army? Zhan Xing said. The army behind him seemed to be responding to his words as they roared. Kill, kill, kill. In an instant, the battle cries reverberated through the clouds and shook the earth. Chu Kuangren chuckled. How would I know if I don't try? He took a step forward. In an instant, an extremely terrifying murderous qi roared out and messed up the clouds. The million-strong army felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren with fear in their eyes. It was as if they could see countless vengeful spirits and evil spirits on this man's body, which had turned into a scene of Azura purgatory. They had never seen such a murderous qi before. Even if they combined the murderous qi of their millions of people, they would not be able to match up to a tenth of his opponents. It was too terrifying. Just how many people had this man killed? They felt that if there was a god of massacre in this world, then this man before them was definitely worthy of it. You're all too naive to compete with me in terms of murderous qi, Chu Kuangren said calmly. He looked at the million-strong army before him without a trace of emotion in his eyes. It was as if he was looking at millions of weeds. He had killed too many living beings in the extraterrestrial battlefield. Too many to count. Although it was not something to boast about, he dared to say that no one in the firmament star could compare to him in terms of killing. On the battlefield, only the sound of the wind could be heard. The million-strong army was silent as they were suppressed by a single person's murderous qi. One of the soldiers could no longer withstand the terrifying murderous qi and fainted on the spot. Then the soldiers fell one after another. Even the cultivators could not withstand it. In the end, the only ones who could withstand it were those who were mentally tough and had at least reached the sage realm. As for the others, they had long fallen to the ground. Chu Kuangren stood there without doing anything. All he did was release his murderous qi, and it was enough to defeat the million-strong army. The Yanwu tribe members behind him were dumbfounded. Is this Song Xing sage's power? It's too powerful. What a terrifying murderous qi. Did Song Xing sage kill every living being in the firmament star? Otherwise, where did he get this murderous qi from? How is this possible? This must be some kind of power. Just like alchemy, Song Xing sage always surprises us. As the crowd discussed, they looked at the white figure that was not tall but was unusually majestic. Their admiration for him was obvious. Wind Valley, Yanwu tribe, and the others looked at each other. Initially, they were worried that Chu Kuangren would use some method to deal with the Star Slayer tribe. But now, there was only one thought in their minds. This battle was over. Chapter 780. What kind of person is he? Zhan Xing stared at Chu Kuangren with a never-before-seen look of seriousness in his eyes. He clearly did not have any cultivation base, yet his frail body could unleash a murderous aura that could intimidate millions of people. Despite being called a sage, he still had such a murderous aura around him. Allow me to face you in person, Zhan Xing said as he slowly stood up with the golden greatsword in his hand. A majestic surge of Emperor's qi instantly erupted. Hu Sha and the others looked at him with hope in their eyes. Our leader is about to make his move. That's great. I think only our leader can suppress this person. They had full confidence in Xianxia. Seeing that Xianxia was about to make his move, the people from the Flame Warrior tribe looked grim too. The son of human god is finally going to make his move. Xianxia was a legendary name among the humans. Not even the celestial tribe dared to underestimate him. He was the only child born from the union of a human and a celestial in countless years. He was blessed with both divine power and qi refinement. Chu Kuangren looked at him with interest. Let this battle decide who among us is qualified to be the leader of the human tribe. Xianxia yelled and attacked with his sword. With a single slash, a majestic golden sword qi surged. At the same time, Daoist patterns spread from his body and combined with the Emperor's qi to form a small world that enveloped Chu Kuangren within. An invisible force of suppression erupted. I don't think anyone below the level of a Daoist master can withstand this attack, Chu Kuangren said as his mind power circulated. When the majestic palm qi reached him, it automatically dissipated. It did not even lift the hem of his shirt. Wuxia and the others could not help but widen their eyes in shock. How is this mind power possible? Xianxia could not help but be shocked. It was no secret that Chu Kuangren was a member of the Transcendent Tribe. However, the problem was that Xianxia had met the leader of the Transcendent Tribe before, and the leader's mind power was nothing compared to his. Hence, he did not take Chu Kuangren seriously at first. However, the mind power that Chu Kuangren displayed now was many times stronger than the leader of the Transcendent Tribe. They were not on the same level. Your qi refinement level is considered not bad in this era, but it's a shame that it's still too weak. Chu Kuangren shook his head and said. Then he said, show me your divine power too. Let me see the true power of the Son of God. Xianxia felt an invisible pressure enveloping him. This kind of oppressive feeling, Vajra divine power. With a cold shout, Xianxia's body emitted a golden radiance. Boundless divine might spread out from his body. Divine power, Emperor. The two types of energy fused on Xianxia's body, turning into a peerlessly tyrannical energy. Its might was so strong that it shook everything within millions of miles. The entire earth was shaking violently. Even the void was blasted apart. The leader is getting serious. This is power comparable to a sovereign's. Wuxia and the others stared at Xianxia's back with bright eyes. In all these years, they had rarely seen Xianxia use his divine power. He was almost invincible in qi refinement alone. Meanwhile, the power that erupted from the combination of divine power and qi refinement was comparable to a sovereign. No one in the entire human race could compare to him. Song, you're the first person in all these years that forced me to use my full power. To show my respect, I'll use my strongest attack. Are you ready? Xianxia said in a low voice. Come, Chu Kuangren said calmly. Xianxia slowly raised the golden greatsword in his hand. A gust of wind blew. The wind was mixed with golden qi that tore the earth apart. The wind grew stronger and stronger. The golden qi became denser and denser. Gradually, a golden tornado formed around Xianxia, and its terrifying might tore the void apart. Vajra tempest slash. Xianxia's eyes lit up. With a slash of his sword, a golden tornado swept out majestically. Everyone watching the storm grew shocked. The power behind this attack was already comparable to that of a overgod. Across all of firmament, there were practically not many cultivators who could survive this attack. Is that all you've got? Chu Kuangren chuckled. He slowly lifted his finger and gently tapped the void. In an instant, countless Daoist patterns spread out from his fingertips. His mind power surged as well. His mind power and Daoist patterns combined to form a lesser realm, which Xianxia's lesser realm was instantly shattered. The moment the golden tornado was enveloped by the lesser realm, it calmed down and eventually turned into a gentle breeze that blew past Chu Kuangren. Xianxia was dumbfounded. Everyone was dumbfounded too. That's it? That's his strongest attack? Impossible! This is impossible! Xianxia started to doubt his life. Ever since he was born, his power had always been smooth sailing and he had never encountered any setbacks. How could this be? His strongest attack had actually been neutralized by the other party with just a wave of his hand. How was this possible? No, I don't believe it. Xianxia's mind exploded. He charged towards Chu Kuangren with the golden greatsword in his hand and slashed at his head. However, his sword was blocked by an invisible barrier when it got close to Chu Kuangren. It stopped in midair. Ripples spread out in the void. The combination of divine power and chi refinement can indeed increase your strength by a lot, but that's all it can do. Chu Kuangren said calmly. He slowly pointed a finger, and a strong psychic wave gathered at the tip of his finger. Then he gently touched the golden sword. Crack, crack, a crisp sound was heard. Cracks appeared on the wind-cutter greatsword, which was rumored to have been bestowed by the gods. Finally, with a snap, it shattered into pieces. The mind power continued to spread and hit Xianxia's body. The golden armor on his body could not escape the fate of being destroyed as well. It exploded and Xianxia was sent flying as he spat out a mouthful of blood and crashed into a mountain in the distance, kicking up a huge cloud of dust. He lay in the crater with his armor broken and only a few pieces of rags were left on his body. His hair was messy and messy. This is impossible, this is impossible, Xianxia kept mumbling to himself. He could not believe what had just happened. Not only him, but everyone else was the same as well. Xianxia was a legendary name. Almost no one in the human race could match up to him. However, in front of Chu Kuangren, he could not resist at all. Song Shengxian, this is too powerful. Can the mind power really be this powerful? Yenwu, Fenrir, and the other strong cultivators who were secretly observing all stared at Chu Kuangren's back with their mouths agape. The Yenwu tribe's army, on the other hand, was extremely excited. They were chanting Chu Kuangren's name with fanatical faith in their eyes. Chu Kuangren patted his cloak and smoothed out his hair. He then looked up at the sky without saying anything. With a surge of his mind power, a violent gust of wind with thousands of mysterious Daoist patterns swept out and shattered the clouds. In an instant, a divine light flashed within the clouds. Chapter 781. Divine light flickered in the clouds. A golden figure appeared, exuding boundless divine might. When everyone saw that figure, their faces changed. Even the cultivators of the reverse god pavilion who were secretly observing couldn't help but look serious. A god, and a sovereign at that. One of the 33 chief gods, the Vajra chief god. As expected, even the gods are paying attention to this battle. They've even sent out master gods. How surprising. How is Sage Tsang going to deal with this? Master gods were the most powerful existences in this world. For countless years, master gods had ruled over the world, and no one had ever dared to defy them. In the distance, on the godly mountain, the overgods were also paying close attention to Chu Kuangren. There was a light screen in front of them, and it showed the scene of Chu Kuangren facing off against the Vajra master deity. Do you guys think that Tsang can handle the Vajra master god? The flame master god said indifferently. No one can resist the power of a lord god, let alone a human. The Yenwu tribe is destined to perish today. That's right, the dignity of a god cannot be challenged. It's just that I didn't expect this Tsang to be able to defeat Xianxia. In the end, he's just a bastard. The sovereigns were all discussing amongst themselves. Very few master gods believed that Tsang was a match for the Vajra master god. Within the Yenwu tribe, the Vajra master deity stared at Chu Kuangren with a cold, murderous intent on his stern face. No one can challenge the godly aura and continue living, and you're no exception. Human Song, are you ready to die? Sovereign, don't waste words. Make your move. The Vajra overlord gently shook the golden spear in his hand, and the potency of the divine weapon erupted. A ray of golden chi surged towards Chu Kuangren. Just this strike alone was already not weaker than Xianxia's full-powered strike from before. Everywhere the strength chi passed, the space would shatter inch by inch. Chu Kuangren gently tapped his finger. The golden energy burst like a bubble in an instant. When the Vajra Master God saw this, his expression froze. Sure enough, the person in front of him was using telekinesis. However, this was the first time he had seen such strong telekinesis. This person was a strong enemy. The Vajra Master God retracted his contempt. Vajra divine power, heart-shattering spear. The Vajra overlord took a step forward and arrived in front of Chu Kuangren. The spear in his hand stabbed out as his divine power and Daoist patterns merged together. That spear was aimed directly at Chu Kuangren's heart. Even a lord-level existence would die from that attack. World luck. The psyche power combined with the small world and turned into a chain. Just as the spear was about to hit Chu Kuangren's back, it bound the golden spear so that it could not get any closer. Small world energy. He's not a chi refinement cultivator, yet he's able to use chi refinement techniques. There are way too many secrets on this person. The Vajra chief god thought to himself. But she didn't give him a chance to think too much. Chu Kuangren's mind power had already transformed into an invisible giant hand that blasted outwards. Even a lord like Chu Kuangren was sent flying by the terrifying force. Bang bang bang. The chief god was sent flying, smashing through one mountain range after another like a cannonball. The sight of it made everyone's hearts palpitate. Azure was actually a match for the main gods. In the mountain range, the Vajra chief god's expression was grim. A crack had appeared on the golden armor on his body. Although it was very slight, that armor was a divine weapon that was born together with him. For countless years, no one had ever been able to break it. Chu Kuangren was the first. What a human anomaly! If I don't kill you today, you'll become a huge problem in the future. The murderous intent in the Vajra chief god's eyes almost solidified. He raised his hand to recall his golden spear. However, that spear was now tightly bound by the world lock. No matter how hard he tried, he could not summon it back. D****. He stomped his feet, and the ground almost exploded. In an instant, he shot towards Chu Kuangren like a cannonball. Golden divine power surged around his body, and he emanated an indestructible aura. 10,000 deity calamity fire lotus. Faced with another attack from the Vajra chief god, Chu Kuangren moved. His mind power surged out like a tidal wave. Over the past few days, he had completely mastered the telekinesis cultivation method that he had obtained from the divine sense tribe. With his talent, he had combined it with his ultimate Dao and created a brand new mystery. He named it Rise with a Thought. With a thought. Suddenly, an endless stream of flames emerged from the heavens and earth and converged towards Chu Kuangren, forming into a golden red fire lotus. The fire lotus flew towards the Vajra chief god. The Vajra master god and the fire lotus collided with a loud boom. That tiny fire lotus burst forth with an unimaginable amount of power, sending the Vajra master god flying once more. Not only that, but the golden red flames wrapped around his body, causing the divine power in his body to start burning away. Impossible! These flames are burning my divine power. Myriad deity tribulation fire? Is this specially used to deal with gods? Scatter! The Vajra master god was extremely shocked as he let out a loud roar and dispersed the god power that was attached to his body. Even though he had expended some of his god power, it had also prevented the flames from burning the rest of the god power within his body. With a single thought, 10,000 blades create a disaster of soldiers. Chu Kuangren's calm voice rang out again. His mind power circulated. The spiritual chi between the heavens and earth began to converge. Swords, sabers, weapons, spears, axes, and so on began to materialize from the spiritual chi. The densely packed weapons covered the entire sky. Wherever the weapons pointed, even the master gods could not help but tremble violently. Go! Chu Kuangren said softly. Thousands of spiritual soldiers rushed towards the Vajra master god as if they had been summoned. Adamantine armor, protect me! The Vajra master god roared as countless Daoist patterns appeared on his golden armor. His divine power gushed out and formed a golden light barrier. The countless weapons collided with the barrier, causing loud explosions. How powerful! I can't believe a human possesses such power. The Vajra Master God frantically channeled the divine power within his body and increased the power of his divine companion weapon to its limit to defend against the countless weapons. However, he still felt an unprecedented pressure. This pressure reminded him of a certain existence. For countless years, he had only felt a similar pressure from that existence. Master God. Could this human be a match for the Master God? A ridiculous thought popped up in the Vajra Master God's mind. No, that was impossible. How could the lowly human race be mentioned in the same breath as the God King? The Vajra Master God roared in denial of that thought. Crack, crack. At that moment, the golden light barrier began to crack. Cracks began to spread. More and more cracks appeared, and finally, with a loud boom, the golden light barrier shattered. The spiritual weapons also smashed onto the Vajra Master God one after another, and the surrounding ground was also affected by the impact, causing dust to billow everywhere. When the spiritual weapons and the dust settled, the crowd saw a battered and bloodied figure lying in a crater. The golden armor on his body was already broken into dozens of pieces. Everyone felt like they were in a dream when they saw the scene before them. The Overgod has been defeated. Song Shengxian has won. We've won. We've won. We've won against the Overgod. Chapter 782. For countless years, the deities had always been high and mighty, especially the Overgods. The way everyone saw it, the chief gods were invincible. They had the terrifying power to destroy the world with just a lift of their hand. Although the human race had invented cultivation methods, after so many years of development, even the strongest cultivator was extremely weak in the face of a chief god. However, now, Chu Kuangren had defeated a Overgod right in front of them. Moreover, he was unscathed too. This made the humans extremely excited. It turned out that the deities were not invincible. It turned out that humans could defeat the deities too. We can win. The human race will rise again. We won't be a captive of the deities. We must. As long as we're led by Tsang Sage, we can win. Yenwu, Fenrir, and the others were extremely excited. In the godly mountain, the overgods who were watching the battle could not sit still anymore. I can't believe this Tsang is so powerful. The overgods are no match for him? They were extremely shocked. They felt like their supreme status had been challenged. No, we can't let Tsang live. We must kill him. Everyone, I believe you've all seen this clearly. This Tsang is only strong in his mind power. He's not an immortal like we thought. As long as he's not an immortal, his mind power will have its limits. I don't believe we can't kill him with a few more overgods. That's right. The overgod's eyes were filled with cold, murderous intent. Chu Kuangren's existence had shaken their status. They could not sit back and watch as Chu Kuangren led the human race to greater heights. Yenwu tribe. Chu Kuangren had just defeated the Vajra overgod. His aura was very stable, and it seemed like he did not expend much energy. Mind power originated from the soul, and with his current soul power, it was not too difficult to defeat a overgod. Cough cough. You're dead meat. In the crater, the Vajra overgod slowly climbed up and coughed out 2 mouthfuls of blood. He glared at Chu Kuangren with intense hatred. As a overgod, this was the first time he was in such a sorry state. Oh, you're not dead yet? It seems like your divine physique is quite strong. No wonder you're called the Vajra overgod. Chu Kuangren chuckled. Tsang, you don't know the true strength of a deity. Even if you kill me, I won't die. After a few thousand years, I'll be reborn in the godly mountain. This is the true strength of a sovereign. The Vajra master deity sneered. Chu Kuangren was not surprised to hear that. He had seen these things in the records of the later generations. That was why people chose to seal the gods instead of killing them. It doesn't matter. You guys can resurrect whenever you want, but I'll always be your nightmare. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. He gently raised his hand. Thousands of weapons converged once again. But at this moment, the sky suddenly darkened, and terrifying waves of divine power erupted from afar. Furthermore, every single one of them was on par with the Vajra chief god. Song, you're too naive. Do you think I'm the only god in the Protoss? Do you think that the main gods will just sit back and watch after you display power comparable to a main god? You might be able to defeat me, but can you defeat the combined forces of the main gods? The Vajra master god roared with laughter as a smug look appeared in his eyes. Chu Kuangren then stepped on his head. You're very noisy. Bang! Boundless psyche power erupted, and the Vajra chief god's already severely injured head exploded on the spot. A chief god had fallen. A golden prismatic crystal fell out. That was the chief god's godhead. Chu Kuangren picked it up and tossed it into his yin and yang ring. After he killed the Vajra chief god, a terrifying chill suddenly erupted between the heavens and the earth, freezing everything within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers. The frigid wind swept towards the Yenwu tribe. If this frigid wind were to land in the Yenwu tribe, countless people would die. At this critical moment, Chu Kuangren released his mini-realm and enveloped the entire Yenwu tribe within it. Under the protection of the mini-realm, everyone was spared from the disaster. Boom, boom. The ground shook, thunder rumbled, storms raged, floods surged, and all sorts of natural disasters accompanied by powerful divine power fluctuations appeared one after another. The Yenwu tribe looked exceptionally small in the face of these forces. They all knew that without the protection of Chu Kuangren's mini-realm, any one of these forces would be enough to destroy them. Such terrifying divine power fluctuations, and they're all different. They're all main gods. How many main gods are here? With such a lineup, are the deities going to wipe out the entire human race? Not really. The deities still need to harvest faith energy from the human race, so they won't wipe out the entire human race. I'm afraid these main gods are here to deal with Tsang Sage. With so many main gods, even Tsang Sage won't be able to deal with them. It's not easy for the human race to have a sage who can rival the main gods. Is he going to fall just like that? D*Eminent. The continuous heavenly disasters shook the minds of everyone present. In the face of such power, even an Empyrean was very insignificant. They knew that these forces were all here for one person. Chu Kuangren stood between the heavens and the earth. His not-so-tall body was unusually tall in the face of these horrifying natural disasters. His expression was very calm. It was as if he would not budge even if the sky fell and the earth collapsed. Amidst the snowstorm, the first main god arrived. It was a man in a white robe with a cold expression. This person was also the Frost Master God who planted the frost mark on Tsang Sage back then. Behind him, a blue-robed figure walked out from the dark clouds. His body was surrounded by bluish-purple lightning, making him look extremely domineering. It was the Lightning Master God. The raging winds gathered and turned into a woman. It was the Tempest Master God. The flames between the heavens and earth converged and formed into a burly man with a head full of red hair. This person was the Flame Master God. A dazzling white light bloomed in the sky, and on the other side of the white light was an extremely dense darkness. The two stood opposite each other. The Light Master God and the Darkness Master God also walked out. Amidst the quaking ground, a stone pillar suddenly protruded, and on top of that stone pillar stood a majestic figure. It was the Great Master God. Buzz buzz, the void trembled, and a black gate appeared. The gate opened, and a figure in a black robe walked out, surrounded by countless vengeful spirits. This was the Lord of the Underworld. These are all familiar faces. Chu Kuangren chuckled. In the future, he had crossed paths with the myriad deity sect before. Those disciples could activate the power of the deities, so they had created various divine projections of the deities. He had seen every deity here before. This was especially true for the Lord of the Underworld, the Light Master God, and the Darkness Master God. He had met these guys a few times already. Ice Master God, Flame Master God, Tempest Master God. Oh my God! 8 Master Gods. To think that 8 Master Gods have come. My God, this is too scary. Compared to Chu Kuangren's calmness, the cultivators who were watching the battle could not help but gasp. One main god was enough to make people despair. Yet now, 8 main gods had suddenly appeared. It's over. It's really over now. No matter how strong Tsang Sage is, he won't be a match for 8 main gods. The heavens want to end the human race's luck. Chapter 783. The 8 overgods hovered in the air as all sorts of natural disasters circled around them, crazily attacking Chu Kuangren's lesser realm. Everyone thought that Chu Kuangren could not hold on any longer. How was he supposed to fight against 8 overgods? However, the strong cultivators who were secretly observing could not help but gulp as they stared at Chu Kuangren. They were more shocked than the 8 overgods. Tsang can still stabilize his lesser realm under the attack of 8 overgods' divine powers. Isn't his lesser realm a little too sturdy? Could it be that even 8 overgods can't suppress him? The strong cultivators who were secretly observing were all shocked. Meanwhile, the 8 overgods looked at Chu Kuangren with a solemn expression. For a human to be able to force 8 overgods to join forces against him, Tsang, you're truly a legend. The flame overgod said to Tsang. Why waste your breath on him? Let's do it. The frost overgod raised his hand and unleashed his divine power, turning it into a frost chi that froze everything in its path. Let's see who's stronger if we're competing in frost chi. Chu Kuangren chuckled. A surge of frost chi that was no weaker than the frost overgods erupted. With a single thought, 10,000 rivers of frost and snow shall freeze. The frost chi erupted from Chu Kuangren's body. Wherever it went, the void, sand, grass, and even space were all frozen. When the 2 surges of frost chi collided, it instantly turned the entire place into a world of ice and snow. The surge of frost chi overpowered the frost overgod. A surge of frost chi landed on the frost overgod, causing his entire body to shiver. His face instantly turned pale as if his blood and soul were about to be frozen. He looked at Chu Kuangren in disbelief. How can this be? How can your frost chi be so strong? Freezing with frost. And the one who froze was him, the frost overgod. It was unbelievable, but the truth was right before their eyes. Although they were shocked, they had no choice but to believe it. You used the frost mark to torture me for years. What's wrong? Can't you take this bit of frost chi? Chu Kuangren chuckled. He lifted his palm gently, and his mind power erupted once again. The terrifying frost chi turned into a white flood dragon that charged towards the frost overgod. At that moment, a bolt of lightning exploded. The lightning master god came before the ice master god as a thick purplish-blue thunderbolt blasted apart the frosty aura. Even though his strength was much stronger than the ice master god's, he could not help but let out a solemn expression in the face of this chilling aura. Everyone, don't just stand there, make your move. The lightning master god said coldly. The other sovereigns instantly attacked as well. Then, all sorts of divine powers such as the winds, the earth, the darkness, and the light erupted and charged towards Chu Kuangren from all directions. Faced with such power, even a Dao Lord would be instantly killed. Chu Kuangren channeled his mind power to its maximum. The invisible psychokinesis force caused the void around him to distort. With a single thought, all techniques returned to the void. Chu Kuangren let out a soft grunt, and several vortexes appeared around him. Within these vortexes, a large number of Daoist patterns were circulating and intertwining. All of the divine power attacks that entered these vortexes were disintegrated one after another. Rising with a single thought was a mystery that Chu Kuangren had come up with after researching the mind power cultivation technique. It was also an interpretation of his path of self-improvement and invincibility. At this stage, it was divided into 4 moves. 10,000 deities tribulation fire lotus, 10,000 swords creating calamity of weapons, 10,000 rivers misty snow. These 3 techniques were all offensive techniques. Meanwhile, the 4th technique, all techniques return to the void, was a defensive technique. This technique was somewhat similar to the invincible heavenly vortex technique. The only difference was that it did not have a rebounding ability, but its defensive power was much stronger. Countless divine powers were disintegrated one after another when they entered the vortexes that Chu Kuangren had created. They could not hurt him at all. Compared to the deities, his body was extremely fragile. Everyone knew that if they could land a hit on Chu Kuangren, he would definitely die on the spot with his fragile physical body. However, they could not do it. What a powerful defensive technique. The underworld god's expression turned grim. Then he channeled his divine power and chanted a strange syllable. It was the underworld god's sole divine ability, the underworld god's language. The power of the underworld god's language charged towards Chu Kuangren, directly attacking his soul through his physical body. This attack was so terrifying that it was impossible to defend against it. In the future, Chu Kuangren had experienced this technique twice, but the power of those 2 times was far inferior to the one he was facing now. This time, it was the underworld god's full power. If I didn't come to this era, this underworld god's language might have some effect on me. But now, it's useless. Chu Kuangren stood his ground and allowed the underworld god's language to attack him. Before he came to this era, his soul energy was already extremely powerful because he cultivated the Lotus Sutra. It was no weaker than a Daoist's. After he came to this world, he had consumed 99 soul fruits. In addition to that, he had also cultivated the 9 transformations 3 elemental soul refinement technique. Hence, his soul strength was probably no weaker than a Daoist's. The underworld god's language's attack was completely useless against him. The underworld god noticed this too. He looked at Chu Kuangren in shock. The underworld god's language is useless against him. How can his soul be so powerful? He channeled his divine power again. Suddenly, a black door appeared in the void. Once the door opened, countless Shura evil spirits immediately rushed out, howling. It was another divine ability of the underworld god, the door of the underworld. Heh, it's this stupid door again. Chu Kuangren chuckled. With a single thought, spiritual qi gathered and formed into thousands of weapons. Countless blades swept out like a storm. Everywhere they passed, the Azura evil spirits were completely annihilated. Then, the thousands of weapons landed on the black door. The entire door was blasted into smithereens by the weapons. With the door of the underworld destroyed, the underworld god's face instantly turned pale. It was obvious that he had suffered some backlash. Raging flame dragon howl. The flame master god made his move. Golden flames burned around his body and transformed into a ferocious fire dragon. The surrounding air felt like it was being set on fire. The fire dragon roared with an earth-shattering aura. Chu Kuangren stood on the spot. With a single thought, the spiritual qi between heaven and earth gathered towards him. Daoist patterns intertwined and formed a golden-red fire lotus. Fighting fire with fire, the golden-red fire lotus landed on the fire dragon. The 2 flames formed by divine power and mind power clashed with each other. The void was distorted by the extreme heat. In the end, the 2 flames exploded at the same time. The waves of fire that swept out collided with the flame master god's body. The mighty flame master god let out a scream from the heat and was pushed back a few hundred meters. A hole was burned through his clothes, revealing a large piece of burnt skin. The frost master god was injured by the chilling qi, and the flame master god was burned by the flames. Everyone was in disbelief. The earth master god and the windstorm master god followed suit. However, they could not hurt Chu Kuangren either. Instead, they were injured and pushed back by his powerful mind power. Chu Kuangren had single-handedly suppressed the 8 great overgods. Everyone was dazzled by the elegant demeanor he displayed in his every move. At that moment, the humans seemed to have seen a ray of light. A ray of hope that pierced through the dark night and spanned the ages. There's hope for the humans. In Wind Valley, Yen Wu and the others were overwhelmed with emotions. New. Chapter 784. Chu Kuangren overpowered the 8 overgods. His unparalleled strength shook the entire firmament and land. As the 8 overgods sustained injuries one after another, The other overgods who were watching the battle from afar could no longer sit still. Initially, they thought that the 8 overgods would be more than enough to deal with Chu Kuangren. However, it seemed like they had made the wrong judgment. Chu Kuangren's combat strength was ridiculously strong. We must join in as well. That's right. If this goes on, we might not even be able to kill this person. Our celestial tribe's reputation will be tarnished. If the 8 overgods can't even take down a single human, how are we going to build our reputation in the human race? Rays of light flew out of the godly mountain. In the Yanwu tribe, Chu Kuangren was very proficient in using his mind power. With all kinds of mind power cultivation techniques and his own invincible techniques, he almost single-handedly suppressed the 8 overgods. Countless humans were overwhelmed by the sight of it. At that moment, another powerful surge of divine power came from afar. 12 rays of light had arrived. It's the oceanic deity, the wood deity, the demonic deity, another 12 chief gods. Oh my god, all these chief gods have appeared together just to deal with a single human. This is way too extravagant, isn't it? TSK, this kind of thing has never happened before. Initially, everyone thought that it was just a battle between the Star Slayer tribe and the Yanwu tribe, but things had progressed far beyond their expectations. This was clearly a battle between the celestial tribe and the human race. If Chu Kuangren could win this battle, his reputation in the human race would rise to an unprecedented level. Not only that, but the human race would also realize through this battle that the celestial tribe was not omnipotent and that they could still fail. This would also plant a seed for overthrowing the rule of the celestial tribe. On the other hand, if Chu Kuangren died, the human race would not be able to recover. At that thought, everyone, including the ferocious beasts in the firmament and land, paid close attention to this battle. The celestial tribe has ruled this land for so many years. It's time to make some changes. Perhaps this song is the key. He's a rare talent. I can't believe there's such an anomaly in the human race. Could this human be the next ruler of Firmament Star? Countless strong cultivators in the firmament and land had different thoughts. Outside the Yanwu tribe, following the arrival of the 12 overgods, a terrifying surge of divine power swept towards Chu Kuangren with a majestic aura. 12 plus 8 meant 20 sovereigns. In addition to the slain Vajra master deity, more than half of the master deities in the celestial tribe had been mobilized to deal with Chu Kuangren. Are there any more? Do you want me to give you some time to gather all the sovereigns? Chu Kuangren tugged at the cloak on his body and smiled. Against the 20 most powerful overgods in the world, he behaved extremely casually. He did not feel nervous at all. Hearing his words, the expressions of the gods became extremely ugly. Ever since I was born, this is the first time I've met a heretic like you. If you don't die, my god race won't be able to rest easy. That's right. The human tribe is only fit to be controlled by the gods. Obey and respect the gods. This is the only way for you to survive in this world. The human tribe doesn't need a heretic like you. You must die. The human tribe was born to provide labor and faith to the celestial tribe. Resistance will only result in destruction. Every overgod stared at Chu Kuangren with a murderous intent that almost solidified in their eyes. The atmosphere between the heavens and the earth became extremely tense. The 20 overgods channeled their divine powers and were ready to strike. The vast ripples of divine power shook the entire ground. Countless living beings on the ground prostrated themselves on the ground, shivering in fear. The only way for us to survive? What a joke! The human tribe was born free. We have our own way of survival. It's not up to you gods to tell us what to do. Chu Kuangren said loudly. With the help of his mind power, his voice spread across the entire world, inspiring countless humans. This is your destiny. The underworld god said coldly. Destiny? I'll show you what destiny is. An incredibly powerful and domineering aura suddenly erupted from Chu Kuangren's body. Countless Daoist patterns spread out with him as the center, causing the entire firmament star to tremble. Accompanied by a deafening explosion in the sky, All living beings instinctively felt an indescribable sense of fear. This energy, all the overgods at the scene could not help but narrow their eyes. They could clearly feel the godheads within their bodies trembling slightly. It was as if they were afraid of something. The power of the heavenly Tao. This is the power of the heavenly Tao. The underworld god exclaimed in disbelief. The other overgods were also so scared that their faces turned pale. They trembled as they looked at Chu Kuangren, who had unleashed the power of the heavenly Tao. The power of the heavenly Tao? Why does he have the power of the heavenly Tao? What's going on? The overgods were dumbfounded. The heavenly Tao was the power that maintained the order of the firmament star. It was the collective consciousness of the firmament star and the billions of living beings. Although the gods were born from the innate Taoism, they too would be suppressed by the power of the heavenly Tao. In fact, they were even more suppressed than the other living beings. That was because the heavenly Tao did not like them who were born from the innate Taoism. They lived under the heavenly Tao but were not under its control. You're talking about destiny? Then let's see who's destined. Chu Kuangren said calmly. In his unification Tao state, the combination of the power of the heavenly Tao, his mind power, and his ultimate Taoism was terrifying. With a thought, the 10,000 deities calamity fire lotus. He pointed a finger. The flames of heaven and earth converged and turned into a golden red fire lotus. The fire lotus flew towards the underworld god. Not good. The underworld god channeled his divine power and attacked. A black divine power surged and landed on the fire lotus, but it was easily burned into nothingness. The fire lotus landed on the underworld god's body like a hot knife through butter. With a scream, the underworld god was burned into a piece of charcoal. Retreat! Quickly! One of the overgods yelled. With a thought, 10,000 rivers of snow and ice. A chilly wind descended from the sky with frost and snow. The boundless chill spread out with Chu Kuangren at the center. This chill was too piercingly cold. The overgods wanted to retreat, but they felt as if their bodies were frozen, and their movements became sluggish. With a thought, 10,000 blades of war. Chu Kuangren chuckled. Spiritual qi gathered and thousands of blades swept in all directions. The flame overgod, frost overgod, tempest overgod, and earth overgod who were closest to Chu Kuangren were instantly killed by the countless blades. How can it be so terrifying? The overgods were so scared that their souls almost flew out of their bodies. Just when Chu Kuangren was about to follow up with another attack, ripples appeared in the void, and mysterious Daoist patterns appeared one after another. These Daoist patterns made Chu Kuangren's mini-world freeze for a moment. This power, Chu Kuangren squinted. Let's go! An indifferent voice rang out. The other sovereigns, upon hearing this, hurriedly left. Chu Kuangren did not chase after them. Instead, he looked at a mountain not far away and saw a man in a silver-white robe standing there. That man was also a overgod. Chu Kuangren was very familiar with the energy waves that emanated from his body. It was one of the space-time techniques that he specialized in. Overgod of space, Chu Kuangren read out his name with a playful look in his eyes. Chapter 785. Xiao AI, Analyze the Space-Time Overgod. Chu Kuangren muttered in his mind, and all sorts of information about the space-time overgod appeared in his mind. Master, I have good news. The omniscient spirit Xiao AI suddenly said. Oh, tell me about it. According to the analysis, the space-time overgod's godhead contains powerful space-time energy. If we use his godhead to activate the river of time, we can succeed even without the Daoist master's energy, Xiao AI said slowly. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up when he heard that. That's a pleasant surprise. Chu Kuangren looked at the space-time overgod with a playful gaze. The space-time overgod shuddered inexplicably. He suddenly felt like he was a rabbit being targeted by a hunter, and an inexplicable sense of danger welled up in his heart. He quickly suppressed this strange feeling. Song, your war with the Celestials has just begun. I won't let this go so easily, the space-time overgod said. His figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. His technique was quite similar to Chu Kuangren's spatial conveyor technique. Running away after saying those words. Interesting. He had no intention of giving chase. He had indeed won this battle, but he had expended a lot of his mind power as well. He might not be able to take it if he continued to fight. Of course, the Celestials might know this too, but they did not dare to continue fighting because they did not know how many more overgods Chu Kuangren could kill before his mind power ran out. Chu Kuangren deactivated his Daoist unification mode. He picked up all the godhoods on the ground. Back at the tribe, Yanwu, Fenrir, Qingyi, and the others walked up to Chu Kuangren. They looked at him with fanatical respect. Song Shengxian, you're amazing. Yeah, you managed to chase away so many overgods. You're the only one with such strength since the birth of the human race. Not bad, you're too powerful. Chu Kuangren smiled at the crowd's admiration. As long as you guys work hard, you'll be like me one day. Really? Song Shengxian, don't lie to us. That's right. We humans are born weak. Even the cubs of those ferocious beasts are countless times stronger than us when they are born. Can we really become as powerful as you, sage? Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren with hope in their eyes. When Chu Kuangren heard that, he replied solemnly, you're right. We humans are indeed born weak, but it's precisely because we're weak that we're born with nothing. That's why we have everything we have, and why we have unlimited potential for growth. I am very gratified, because you all know that you are very weak, and admitting that you are weak is precisely the prerequisite for us to become strong. We are weak, but we were born to defeat the strong. Gods aren't scary, and being weak isn't scary either. As long as we humans work together and are of one mind, we will eventually stand upright in the heavens and spread the glory of the human race to the earth. Chu Kuangren gave his speech. After witnessing the scene of him killing a deity, no one doubted his words anymore. In addition to that, he secretly used the ethereal 7 emotions song to stir up everyone's emotions. At that moment, everyone's faces were flushed with excitement and longing. Chu Kuangren's words had planted a strong seed in their hearts. All that was left was to be watered in the future, and then it would sprout. Spread the glory of the human race to the earth. Yanwu said loudly. Spread the glory of the human race to the earth. Spread the glory of the human race to the earth. The morale of the entire Yanwu tribe was at an all-time high. Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren. At that moment, their hearts were filled with an incomparably firm belief that they would follow him for the rest of their lives. Chu Kuangren looked at Yanwu and the others and secretly gave himself a thumbs up. It seemed like he had quite the talent for giving speeches. Chu Kuangren returned to his room. He took out the overgod godheads that he had killed this time. There were 6 in total. They were the godheads of the Vajra god, the windstorm god, the flame god, the frost god, the earth god, and the underworld god. The death of 6 overgods was a huge blow to the celestial race. Of course, the overgods would not really die. After a few thousand years, they would be reborn in the godly mountain. That was the most troublesome part. Chu Kuangren used Xiao AI to analyze the godheads in front of him. They all had their corresponding attributes, and the energy they contained was extremely huge. This is a soul attribute. Suddenly, Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up as he held the underworld god's godhead. The underworld god's godhead contained an extremely huge amount of soul energy, which would be a great help to his cultivation of the 9 transformations 3 elemental soul refinement technique. He kept the rest of the godheads. He then began to refine the underworld god's godhead. Although this body did not cultivate, he did not need a physical body to refine soul energy. All he needed was a powerful soul. In the current firmament star, who else could have a soul that was stronger than him? Time passed. It took Chu Kuangren almost a month to refine the underworld god's godhead. The soul flame that represented the earth's soul gradually grew stronger under the underworld god's godhead's energy, and finally, it completely condensed into the earth soul. Once the earth soul was formed, Chu Kuangren's soul energy skyrocketed. The earth soul has just been formed, and it's still a distance away from the full completion stage. If only I had another underworld god's godhead. Chu Kuangren's sky's soul murmured. The underworld god is dead. I don't know how long it'll take for him to be born again, the earth soul said. There's no hurry. Besides the underworld god's godhead, there are many treasures in this world that can strengthen soul energy. The sky soul chuckled. The sky soul and earth soul returned to his physical body. Chu Kuangren stretched. Roulette, let's spin. Congratulations, host. You've drawn a legendary array master's inheritance. A legendary array master was not bad. He had already taught the humans about alchemy and equipment refining. Now that he was going to teach them about array formations, he wondered if they could learn it. Besides, he was also very proficient in runes. After some thought, Chu Kuangren decided to wait for a while. Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. When he left the room, he habitually used his emperor's thought to scan the Yanwu tribe to see if anything had happened recently. With a glance, he found that there were some unfamiliar guests in the tribe. They were not humans, but wild beasts. Among them were lust, ox demon, ho, and other wild beasts. Chu Kuangren was curious. What were these wild beasts doing in the Yanwu tribe? He found Yanwu. After a short conversation, Chu Kuangren was very surprised. You're saying that they're here to form an alliance with us? Yes. Yanwu nodded. Not only the wild beasts, but some other tribes also want to form an alliance with us. Now that the Yanwu tribe had defeated the Star Slayer tribe, it had become the strongest tribe of the human tribe. Coupled with Chu Kuangren's powerful combat strength of killing over gods, it was only natural that many people wanted to curry favor with them. I'll leave this matter to you, Chu Kuangren said calmly. Unknowingly, his tone was already that of a superior. Yanwu did not feel uncomfortable at all. Although he was now the leader of the Yanwu tribe in name, Chu Kuangren had long been the real master of the tribe. He did not have any objections. After all, Chu Kuangren's achievements and strength were many times stronger than his. Yanwu was even considering when to give up his position. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.